Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we sleep near the cotton fields in Mississippi in the year 1850, when the crickets are loud outside and the firelight moves softly within. Can you imagine lying still while a whole dark field seems to breathe beside you? The rows stretch beyond the cabin yard, pale in the moonlight, their leaves whispering like tired hands. Somewhere close, a mule shifts its weight. Somewhere farther away, a dog barks once, then decides the mystery is not worth the effort. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And as you get comfortable, tell us in the comments where you are listening from and what your local time is right now. Perhaps it is midnight in Manila, dawn in Dublin, or a rainy evening in Atlanta. The night accepts all clocks. The flame bends low. The shadows lean gently across the wall. Now, dim the lights, and you find yourself standing at the edge of a cotton field in Mississippi, where the evening has lowered itself over the land like a warm wool blanket that forgot to be light. The year is 1850, though no one says the number aloud right now. Numbers belong to ledgers, courthouse papers, account books, and men who enjoy making life unpleasant with ink. Out here, the hour is measured by colour, by sound, and by the ache in your legs. You stand where the field gives way to packed earth. The cotton plants sit in their long rows, tidy and demanding, as if they have opinions about discipline. Their leaves are dark now, almost black, with edges silvered by the rising moon. The soil beneath your bare feet still holds the heat of the day. It presses upward through your soles, soft in some places, cracked in others, carrying the faint dusty smell of clay, sweat, and crushed green stems. The crickets begin as scattered notes. One calls near the fence, another answers near the ditch, and then the whole night decides to become music. It is not exactly peaceful, not at first. It is too alive for that. The sound surrounds you, thick and steady, like a woven coverlet pulled across the fields. Frogs add their round voices from a low wet place beyond the tree line. A night bird cries once, sharp and lonely, then disappears into silence. You breathe slowly because the air asks you to. It is heavy with late summer moisture, and every breath feels touched by river distance. Mississippi in 1850 is not only a place of fields and cabins, it is also a place shaped by water, by roads of mud, by markets far away, and by cotton moving outward like a soft white currency. The cotton gin, made famous in the 1790s, has already changed the South deeply. By your night here, cotton is king, as people say, usually with too much confidence. Yet kings always demand tribute. This one asks for land, labour, weather, and silence. It asks for backs bent under the sun. It asks for hands quick enough to pick cleanly and carefully. It asks families to live beside uncertainty. Because a crop may promise wealth in June and disappointment by October. Cotton is a delicate tyrant, which is rude behaviour for something that looks so harmless in bloom. Near the cabins, smoke lifts from low chimneys and hangs under the trees. It smells of oak wood, cornmeal, pork fat, and ash. The scent is comforting in the way all supper smoke can be comforting, even when the day has not been kind. A small orange light flickers through the cracks between rough boards. Another glow trembles behind a cloth hung across a doorway. Firelight has begun its nightly work, softening hard corners and making plain things seem briefly enchanted. You move closer to the yard, careful not to step on scattered tools. A hoe leans against a stump. A wooden bucket sits beside a rain barrel, its iron hoops damp and cool under your fingers. The cabin wall is rough when your hand brushes it, each plank holding splinters and old weather. The doorway stands open for air, because the night is warm and the room inside has been holding heat since morning. Inside, the fire is not large, only enough to cook and keep the room visible. It licks around blackened wood, glowing red beneath a pot hung low. Shadows move over the walls as if the house itself is breathing. You hear the scrape of a spoon against iron. You hear cloth shifting, a child sighing, someone clearing their throat with the seriousness of a tired king on a very small throne. A woman kneels near the hearth, turning hoe cakes on a flat griddle. The cakes are plain, made of cornmeal, water, perhaps a pinch of salt if salt can be spared. Their edges brown and crisp, releasing a smell both simple and powerful. Hunger makes everything persuasive. A few sweet potatoes rest in ashes nearby, their skins blackening while their insides soften. The room holds the warm scent of starch, smoke, and human closeness. You notice how carefully everyone occupies space. A man sits on a low stool, rubbing his palm with slow patience. A child rests against a folded blanket, fighting sleep with heroic incompetence. Another person mends a tear in a shirt by firelight, pushing the needle through cloth with a rhythm older than any plantation account book. The thread catches, loosens, and catches again. Small repairs matter here. They always do. Outside the door, the cotton fields remain visible in pieces. You see a pale patch of row, then darkness, then the faint outline of a fence. Beyond that lies more land, and beyond that other farms, other cabins, other fires, other people listening to the same insect music. Mississippi had become a state in 1817, and by 1850 it was deeply tied to plantation agriculture. That fact sits quietly under everything, like a stone beneath a mattress. No one needs to explain the system to you. You feel it in the arrangement of buildings, in who sleeps where, in who owns land, and who is owned by law. You feel it in the distance between the cabins and the larger house, where another kind of firelight shines behind glass. The law claims order. The night knows better. The night hears the whispers that official papers never bother to record. Still, even under pressure, people make life. They season food when they can. They tease one another softly. They remember birthdays without calendars, measure children against door frames, and recognize footsteps before faces appear. Someone makes a quiet joke about a mule that refused work with more dignity than most politicians. A few tired smiles answer. Gentle sarcasm survives almost anywhere, especially where it has useful work to do. A mainstream history book may tell you about cotton bales, export figures, and the Compromise of 1850 being debated in Washington. Those matters are real. They shape the price of crops and the conversations of powerful men. But here, beside the hearth, history also looks like a cracked cup passed from hand to hand. It looks like a child learning when to speak, and when silence is safer. It looks like firelight making everyone briefly golden. The cabin floor is hard earth, swept clean with care. When you shift your weight, you feel its uneven firmness through your feet. A bedstead stands against one wall, with ropes supporting a mattress filled with corn shucks or moss. Such mattresses could rustle loudly under a restless sleeper, as if the bed wished to announce every private thought. Really, the furniture has no manners at all. Near the rafters, bundles of drying herbs hang upside down. Their shapes are dark against the smoky ceiling. You catch the faint scent of mint, sassafras, and something sharper you cannot name. People in rural Mississippi often relied on household remedies, shared knowledge, and the skills of enslaved healers, midwives, and elders. Doctors might be called when possible, but distance, cost, and distrust all had their say. A quirky little belief floats through the room as someone mentions the moon. Some people say planting, cutting hair, or setting certain tasks should follow the moon's signs. The almanac agrees often enough to make the idea respectable, which is convenient for everybody involved. Whether the moon truly helps the bean vines climb is another matter. But on a night like this, it would be impolite to deny her influence completely. Historians still argue whether some surviving accounts describe daily life accurately, or whether they were shaped too heavily by memory, fear, pride, or the expectations of interviewers. The problem is not small. Many people who lived these nights left no diaries. Others were forbidden the education that would have let them write freely. So the past arrives in fragments, like sparks rising from the hearth. You watch each one carefully before it disappears. A breeze slips through the doorway. It touches the sweat at the back of your neck and cools it for one blessed second. The fire snaps softly, then settles. The baby near the wall stirs, fusses, and returns to sleep after a hand pats the blanket with practiced gentleness. Outside, a mule exhales through its nose, long and dramatic, as if personally offended by darkness. You lower yourself near the threshold, where you can feel both worlds at once. Behind you is the fire, the low murmur of voices, the smell of supper, and the close warmth of bodies resting. In front of you is the field, silvered and watchful, with crickets making the night feel endless. The doorway becomes a border between labour and sleep, between public rules and private breath. You hear a spoon tap the side of the pot. Someone pours water into a tin cup. The water smells faintly of the bucket and tastes of the earth it came through. It is not cold, not exactly, but it is wet and welcome. A person drinks, pauses, and passes it along. The cup is accepted without ceremony. Ceremony is for people with spare time and clean cuffs. The cotton rose seam still now, but their stillness is not empty. They hold the memory of daylight, of fingers moving through bowls, of sacks dragging down rows, of overseers and measurements, of songs begun under breath. Cotton in 1850. Mississippi is not only a crop, it is a schedule, it is a pressure, it is a map of power drawn across the soil. Yet the night refuses to belong entirely to cotton. The crickets claim a large portion, so do the frogs, so does the quiet pride of a swept floor, a mended sleeve, a child fed, a story half told, and a laugh kept low. Firelight makes a small republic of faces for a little while. It cannot change the law, it cannot undo the day, but it can gather people close enough to share warmth. You listen as voices sink lower. The talk moves from work to weather, then from weather to someone's cousin on a nearby place, then to a rumour about prices downriver. News travels strangely here. It comes folded into letters, carried by wagon drivers, overheard near landings, preached from pulpits, and reshaped on porches. By the time a story reaches a cabin at night, it may have grown extra legs. Naturally, it walks faster that way. The larger world presses at the edges of this small room. In 1850, the United States is wrestling with territory, slavery, and the fragile balance between free and slave states. Men in distant chambers argue over compromise. Their words travel slowly, but their consequences travel with dreadful strength. Here, no one needs a newspaper to know that politics can enter a field without asking permission. A coal drops inward and sends up a brief spray of sparks. For a moment, the room brightens. You see the curve of a cheek, the shine of tired eyes, the careful hands of the woman at the hearth. You see the pot, the hanging herbs, the patched blanket, the doorway framing the blue-black fields. Then the light softens again, as if embarrassed by its own boldness. The meal is shared in quiet portions, corn cakes, sweet potatoes, maybe greens cooked down until they surrender. The food is humble, but the act of eating together gives it weight. Hunger loosens its grip one mouthful at a time. Someone hums without realizing it. The tune barely rises, but it threads itself through the crackle of the fire and the cricket song beyond. You feel drowsiness begin at your shoulders. It does not arrive all at once. It gathers, slow and patient, like mist over a low field. Your hands feel heavy. Your breathing begins to match the room's rhythm. The fire breathes in small red pulses. The crickets keep time. The night air presses warm against the open door. Outside, the cotton waits. Inside, the fire holds. Between them, you sit in the hush of 1850 Mississippi, feeling how history is not only made by speeches, battles, laws, and famous names, it is also made by evenings like this, when ordinary people endure the day, protect what tenderness they can, and let the darkness settle around them without giving it everything. You lean back against the rough wall. The wood touches your shoulder through thin cloth. Smoke curls upward. A child finally gives up the noble fight against sleep. The last light in the doorway fades from violet to black, and all around the cabin, in the field, by the fence, under the trees, the crickets continue their patient song, as if they have been hired to stitch the night together and mean to do an honest job. The room settles into the slower work of night, and you sit close enough to the hearth to feel warmth on your knees. The fires become a steady red heart inside the cabin, no longer leaping, only glowing with patient purpose. Smoke curls upward, finding cracks in the chimney clay, then slipping wherever the roof allows. It smells of oak, ash, scorched cornmeal, and the faint sharpness of grease left in iron. You notice the cookware first, because the Firelight loves metal. A black pot hangs from a crane, its rounded side reflecting dull orange patches. A skillet rests nearby, heavy enough to defend a household from hunger or foolishness. Beside it lies a wooden spoon, worn smooth where fingers have held it through countless meals. Nothing here is decorative. Beauty arrives only after usefulness has finished speaking. The supper's ended, but the cabin still holds its flavour. Corn cakes leave a toasted scent in the air, while sweet potato skins smoulder softly in grey ash. A little pot liquor sits in a bowl, dark and salty from greens cooked low. Someone wipes the edge with a piece of bread and makes no apology. In a world this demanding, leaving food behind would be dramatic behaviour, and not the useful kind. You hear quiet movements around you. A woman folds a cloth and places it near the wall. A man rinses a cup with a careful splash from the bucket. The water hits the packed earth outside with a small, final sound. A child chews one last piece of sweet potato, blinking slowly as if each blink requires committee approval. Sleep is winning. It usually does, given enough darkness. The cabin is small, but it contains many worlds. One corner is for food, another for sleeping, another for tools that must not be misplaced. A peg holds a hat shaped by sweat and weather. A split basket rests near the doorway, its weave tight and practical. On a shelf, you see a gourd dipper, a few clay pieces or a folded scrap of cloth, and a bit of string saved for reasons nobody needs to explain. String is always useful, so is patience. The floor has been swept with a bundle of twigs tied tight at one end. You can see the faint strokes left in the dust, curved and overlapping like quiet handwriting. The act feels tender, almost stubborn, even when life is controlled by someone else. A swept floor says something important. It says, "This space has hands that care for it." It says, "Disorder may enter, but it will not be welcomed like company." In 1850 Mississippi, many enslaved families lived in cabins built with rough timber, clay chinking, and simple chimneys. Some were arranged in rows near fields, while others stood near workyards or kitchens. The designs varied by owner, region, skill, and available materials, yet most shared the same truth. They were meant to house labour cheaply, not to offer comfort generously. Comfort had to be made inside them by the people who slept there. You watch that making happen now. A blanket is shaken once, not loudly, because dust and babies both wake easily. A mattress of corn shucks is pressed flatter by practised hands. The sound is dry and whispering, like leaves underfoot in November. A child is guided toward a place near the wall, where drafts are weaker. Another body shifts closer to the fire, then back again when the heat proves too proud. The air inside touches your skin in layers. Near the hearth, it is hot and smoky. Near the door, it is damp and alive with a smell of grass. Higher up, under the rafters, it grows thick with old soot. When you breathe, you taste the day that has just ended. Sweat, soil, Smoke, food, cloth, and tired breathing all mingle together in one heavy human atmosphere. A candle would be useful, but candles cost materials and effort. Firelight is already present, and it asks for nothing except wood. Tallow candles exist in many households, of course, but they are not wasted without reason. On farms and plantations, light after dark is practical, limited, and watched carefully. Darkness comes early for people with little claim on supplies. The night stretches itself wide, and everyone must learn its furniture. You begin to know the room by sound. The ceiling creaks when night air cools the boards. The fire mutters beneath ash. Crickets press against the outside world with their endless fiddling. Somewhere near the wall, a small insect taps and pauses, as if repairing a tiny shoe. A dog scratches itself under the cabin step, then sighs with a full tragedy of being a dog. The humour is quiet here, but it lives. Someone mentions the dog's laziness, and another voice answers that the dog at least has chosen a profession honestly. A low laugh moves through the room. It is not loud enough to travel far. It does not need to. A joke can be small and still keep a person company. A young person sits close to an elder, watching hands twist fibre into a rough cord. The elder works without looking down, using memory more than sight. The fingers move steadily, pulling, turning, smoothing, and pulling again. You can hear the dry whisper of the fibres. You can smell the faint earthiness of them. Work continues after supper because evening is not empty time. Evening is where neglected tasks quietly collect their debts. This is one of the old truths of household life. Labour does not end when field labour ends. Cooking, washing, mending, carrying water, tending children, repairing tools, and preparing food for morning all wait patiently. They are never surprised to be ignored by official records. Account books love crops and livestock. They rarely pause to admire the person who found enough thread to keep a shirt from falling apart. A mainstream historical fact sits plainly beside the hearth. Corn was a staple food across much of the rural South, especially among enslaved communities. It appeared as meal, cakes, mush, hominy, and bread. Shaped by African, native, and European foodways, the table, such as it is, carries a history wider than the plantation. Every bite has travelled through many hands, languages, and memories before reaching this firelit room. You notice a small clay pipe resting near the door. Its bowl is darkened from use, and its stem has been repaired in a clever, imperfect way. Pipes were common objects in the 19th century, traded, made, broken, lost, and found. Some archaeologists have discovered pipe fragments near slave quarters, along with beads, buttons, ceramics, and food remains. Such small things are stubborn witnesses. They gossip from the ground long after everyone else has gone quiet. There is a quirky tidbit in that, almost too small for grand history. Broken dishes were sometimes reused for entirely different purposes, shaped into gaming pieces, scrapers, tokens, or little objects whose meanings remain mysterious. A cracked plate might become part of play, ritual, repair, or simple convenience. The past enjoyed recycling before anyone made it sound virtuous at a public lecture. People used what they had, because what they had was never enough. Still, scholars debate the meanings of many objects found near quarters and cabins. A pierced coin, a blue bead, a buried bundle, or a shaped shard may suggest protection, memory, trade, play, or personal style. Historians and archaeologists continue to ask whether some findings reflect African spiritual traditions, everyday practicality, childhood imagination, or all of these at once. The uncertainty matters, because guessing too confidently can flatten lives that were full of complexity. You turn your attention back to the fire, a pot lid is lifted, and a puff of steam arises like a little ghost that has no ambition. Someone checks whether enough remains for morning. Not much. Enough. Perhaps. Enough is a word that changes shape depending on hunger, weather, and who arrives at the door. Tonight, the bowl is covered, set aside, and trusted to last until dawn. The cabin's walls hold heat unevenly, where clay fills the spaces between logs. The surface is cool and crumbly, where boards overlap poorly. Night air slides through in thin lines. You feel one such thread of air along your ankle. It carries the smell of damp leaves, animal hide, and distant water. Outside, the yard is mostly dark now, except where the doorway spills firelight in a dull gold patch. You look through that doorway and see the shapes of everyday survival. A chopping block waits near a pile of wood. A washtub leans against a post. A few gourds hang drying from a simple rack. The yard is not empty ground. It is workspace, kitchen extension, wash place, child place, animal path, gathering spot, and breathing room. It is a room without walls, furnished by necessity. Inside, a woman begins to braid a child's hair by touch. The child sits cross-legged, head tilted forward, fighting the urge to sleep and complain at the same time. The comb catches once, and the child makes a tiny noise of protest. The woman murmurs something soothing, then something mildly threatening, because tenderness and efficiency often share a bench. The braiding continues. Order is made strand by strand. The smell of hair oil or rendered fat rises faintly, warmed by fingers. You can hear the soft pull of sections being divided. You can feel, almost in your own scalp, the careful tension that comes with neatness prepared for another day. Hair care is not vanity here. It is hygiene, identity, discipline, affection, and inheritance. It is one more place where culture survives under pressure. A man near the stool examines a small cut across his knuckle. It is clean enough, but tender. He wraps it with a rag, tying the knot using his teeth and one hand. The cloth smells of soap, smoke, and work. Such injuries are ordinary, which does not make them harmless. Hands are tools, and tools need tending. A sore finger can change the speed of a whole day. Soap itself is precious and practical. In rural households, it might be made from lye and fat, a process that requires caution and experience. The result could be harsh, but useful for washing clothing, bodies, and utensils. The smell is plain and biting. Cleanliness in such places is not a romantic picture of white linen. It is hard labour against mud, sweat, insects, illness, and smoke. You sense how much knowledge lives in these routines. Nobody gives a speech about how to bank a fire, save ash, judge meal by touch, keep children warm, or mend a seam with poor thread. People simply know, because not knowing has consequences. The skills move through the room quietly. They pass from hand to hand, glance to glance, correction to correction. History often travels without introducing itself. The fire is banked lower now. Ashes pulled gently around the coals so they will last. A live coal in the morning saves trouble, and trouble is already overstocked. The movement of the poker makes a gritty sound. Red light flares, then dulls. Smoke thins a little. The room darkens, and faces become softer, less individual, more like islands in warm shadow. Outside, the crickets do not tire. Their sound presses into the silence left by lowered voices. You hear leaves shifting near the roof, perhaps from a possum, perhaps from wind. The dog beneath the step growls once and then changes its mind. Wise creature. Many alarms are not worth the paperwork, especially when one cannot write. Someone near the wall begins a soft hum. It is not a full song, only a line of melody carried under the breath. The sound is low, private, and steady. It seems to smooth the room's edges. The child with the braided hair leans sideways and sleeps against someone's knee. A hand rests lightly on the child's shoulder, warm and protective. You understand, sitting there, that the cabin is not merely a shelter, It is a place where the day is sorted into smaller pieces, where pain is checked, food is counted, tools are located, and spirits are steadied. It is also a place watched by power beyond its walls. Privacy exists, but not fully. Safety exists, but unevenly. Love exists, and that is the most remarkable fact of all. The last tasks finish one by one, the cup is turned upside down, the spoon is wiped clean, the needle returns to its safe place. A shoe is nudged away from the doorway so no one trips in darkness. These details are tiny, almost sleepy, yet they keep the household moving. Civilization may boast of marble columns, but it also depends on someone knowing where the spoon went. You shift closer to the floor, feeling its coolness through the settling heat. The blanket offered to you is rough, smelling of smoke, bodies, and sun-dried cloth. It scratches faintly at your cheek, but the scratch is honest. The firelight pulses once across the wall, catching the outline of the hanging herbs. The shadows sway like slow thoughts. The cabin grows quieter. Breathing becomes the main speech of the room. A log settles, sending one small spark upward before ash swallows it. The night outside continues its patient orchestra. Crickets, frogs, leaves, and the occasional distant call you cannot name. The field is still there, beyond the yard. But for this hour the room has turned inward. Its warmth gathers low, its shadows deepen. You let your eyes follow the glow along the hearthstones. Each stone is darkened by use, each one holding the memory of countless meals and conversations. The fire does not promise ease. It offers only light, heat, and a centre. Sometimes that is enough to make the next breath gentler. Sometimes that is almost everything. As sleep approaches, the cabin seems to float inside the larger darkness. The walls creak softly. The coals shine red under their grey covering. Someone whispers a final goodnight, barely louder than the insects outside. You breathe in smoke, corn, damp earth, and the warm closeness of people who have laboured through another day. The fire lowers itself into embers, and the room rests around it. Morning enters without politeness, pale and grey at first, then yellow along the field edges. You wake to damp air on your face and the sound of someone moving already. A bucket knocks against a doorway. A rooster offers his opinion as if the world has requested it. Somewhere nearby, a mule gives a heavy breath, the kind that suggests work is a personal insult. You rise into the coolest part of the day, though cool is a generous word. Mississippi warmth waits even in the shadows. Patient and smug, dew beads on grass beside the path and wets your ankles as you walk. The soil feels soft where night moisture has settled. It gives slightly beneath your feet, holding prints for a moment before crumbling at the edges. The cotton field spreads before you in ordered rows. In early light, the plants appear almost gentle. Broad leaves tremble under dew. A few open bowls show white fibre tucked inside their dry brown segments. It looks clean from a distance, even pretty. The trick is that distance is a notorious liar. Up close, every plant demands attention, and every row seems longer than a church argument. You step into the field and feel the first touch of leaves against your shins. They are damp, cool, and slightly rough. The plants brush your clothing with a whispering sound. Small insects lift away as you move. The smell is green and earthy, mixed with clay, sweat, and the faint sweetness of cotton bloom. The air holds a low mist that thins as the sun climbs. Work begins with little ceremony. Sacks are taken up, tools checked, bodies arranged along rows. Some days are for chopping weeds, some for tending, some for picking, depending on the season. Cotton does not ripen all at once. It makes people return again and again, like a creditor with excellent memory. Even after bowls open, the plant keeps producing, stretching harvest across weeks of repeated labour. You feel the sack strap across your shoulder. It pulls before it is even heavy, as if practicing for cruelty. When empty, it trails behind with a soft drag. When full, it becomes another body attached to yours. The cloth scratches your neck. Your fingers reach for open bowls. Careful, because the dried burrs can prick the skin. Cotton is soft in the hand, but its casing has little sympathy. A mainstream fact settles into the rhythm of your hands. By 1850, Mississippi had become one of the central cotton states in the American South. Cotton plantations expanded across fertile lands, especially in the rich Black Belt and river regions. Enslaved labour made that expansion possible. The crop connected rural fields to merchants, banks, textile mills, shipping houses, and distant consumers who might never see a cotton plant. You pull fibre free and drop it into the sack. Pull, twist, release. Pull, twist, release. The motion seems simple for 10 minutes, then becomes an argument with your shoulders. A skilled picker moves quickly without wasting motion, clearing bowls cleanly while keeping eyes on the row. Speed matters, weight matters. At the end of the day, picked cotton may be weighed, recorded, compared, and judged. The sun rises higher, and the field changes character. What seemed silver and quiet becomes bright and exposed. Heat spreads across your back, dew burns away, dust begins to cling to your feet and hems. The leaves lose their cool touch and turn warm against your skin. A grasshopper snaps away from a stem and lands somewhere unseen, making a dry little tick in the row. You hear work more than conversation now. Cloth sacks scrape over soil, leaves rustle, someone coughs. A child calls softly and is answered with a murmur. Farther off, a mule harness creaks near another field. The sound carries strangely in the morning air. It arrives, fades, and returns again, like the land itself is turning in sleep. There are overseers on some plantations, drivers on others, and different layers of authority depending on size, wealth, and management style. Some enslavers live nearby and watch closely. Others depend on hired men, relatives, or appointed workers to enforce pace. The details vary, but the pressure does not. The field is not simply a workplace. It is a controlled landscape, shaped by law, violence, debt, and expectation. You keep your eyes lowered often, not from habit alone, but from necessity. Cotton rows demand attention. Miss a bowl, and the row may accuse you later. Let the sack snag, and you lose time. Let your hand move too fast, and the burr catches skin. Each tiny mistake becomes part of a day measured in pounds. That is the tedious genius of the system. It turns exhaustion into arithmetic. A short breeze comes over the field. Blessed thing! It carries the smell of wet ditch water, crushed leaves, and animals from the lot. For a few seconds, shirts lift slightly from backs, and the skin remembers it is allowed to cool. Then the breeze passes on, clearly having other appointments. The heat closes again, slow and complete. Cicadas begin their rising grind from the trees, louder than crickets and far less considerate. You notice how the rows guide the body. They narrow the world into a green corridor, with a white touch here, another there, and soil always underfoot. Your mind begins to move in fragments, the next bowl, the next step, the next breath. In such repetition, thoughts can hide or wander. A person might count silently, pray silently, plan silently, or sing so softly the song remains inside the chest. A quirky tidbit comes from the plant itself. Cotton flowers do not stay one colour. Many varieties open pale, then shift toward pink or reddish shades as they age. A field can therefore carry soft hints of colour before the bowls mature. It is a botanical little costume change, performed without applause. The plant creates beauty and burden in the same breath, which feels almost rude. By midday, the smell of the field grows stronger. Dust rises in small puffs around moving feet. Sweat salt dries at your temples, then fresh sweat follows. Your palms feel rough from burrs and fibre. Fine bits of cotton cling to your sleeves. A strand sticks to your lip, and you blow it away with more dignity than success. There is no graceful way to argue with fluff. Water becomes the day's quiet desire. You think of the bucket waiting at the end of a row, shaded if fortune is feeling professional. The cup may be shared, dipped, passed, and drained carefully. Warm water tastes metallic, woody, or muddy, depending on the container and source. Still, when your throat is dry, it has the charm of a royal beverage. Kings have praised less deserving things. The field includes many ages. Older children may work beside adults, learning pace long before childhood has properly ended. Elders may carry tasks adjusted to strength, though mercy is never guaranteed. Pregnant women, mothers, skilled hands, new hands, the injured, and the weary all exist within labour demands. Plantation records often reduce them to numbers, ages, values, and productivity. The human body becomes a column in someone's book. Historians still dispute how much variation existed in daily work routines across plantations of different sizes. Some accounts emphasize the gang system, with groups laboring under direct supervision. Others describe task systems in certain regions and crops, where assigned work shaped the day differently. Mississippi cotton plantations often relied on gang labor, yet local practice could vary. The argument remains important because labor organization shaped time, family life, punishment, and small possibilities for autonomy. You bend again, the sack grows heavier. Its weight pulls backward with every step. Your shoulder begins to throb in a dull line from neck to spine. You shift the strap, but the relief is brief. Fingers keep moving because the row continues. A dragonfly glides above the plants, shining blue in the hard light. It looks absurdly free. Nature does enjoy showing off at awkward moments. Around you, the field hums with hidden life. Bees drift near remaining blossoms. Ants work along cracked soil. A spiderweb stretches between two stems, catching dew that survived in shade. The touch of the cotton leaves changes as the day grows. They become limp with heat, brushing skin like damp paper. The atmosphere feels close, as if the sky has lowered its ceiling. A bell or call may mark pauses, but bodies mark them too. Shoulders demand a pause. Thirst insists. The stomach speaks in plain language. Food taken to the field might be simple: cornbread wrapped in cloth, leftover vegetables, a bit of meat if available. It is eaten with dusty hands under narrow shade. The ground is your table. The insects consider themselves invited. You sit near the edge of the field for a brief rest. The shade under a tree is thin, but it matters. Bark presses against your back, rough and steady. You hear flies near the mule harness, the distant chopping of another crew, and leaves clicking overhead. Food tastes of smoke and dust, yet it strengthens you. Even a small meal can feel like a rope thrown across a difficult hour. Conversation stays cautious. A remark about weather is safe. A comment about sore hands is safe enough. A joke about cotton picking itself would be welcome, though sadly the plant shows no ambition. Someone mentions that a boll weevil would be a terrible guest, though the Great Boll Weevil crisis belongs to a later era. In 1850, other pests, weather risks, and soil exhaustion already trouble growers and workers alike. Cotton farming changes the land as well as the people. Fields are cleared, trees felled, soil exposed, and nutrients drawn away season after season. Planters move, expand, borrow, and speculate. The crop promises wealth, but often creates debt. This matters even for those who own nothing, because debt can sharpen exploitation. When money tightens, humanity is rarely the first concern of men counting profits. You return to the row. Afternoon light is harsher, flatter, less forgiving. The plants seem to repeat themselves endlessly, each one a small demand. A cloud forms over the far tree line, but it offers only decoration. Thunder might come later or not. Weather holds power over everyone here, from the richest planter to the smallest child carrying water. Rain can save a crop, ruin a picking day, or turn roads into brown soup. Your hands learn the work even while resenting it. The thumb presses, the fingers gather, the wrist turns. Cotton drops into the sack with a faint, soft sound. At times, the motion becomes nearly dreamlike. Then a burr scratches your knuckle and returns you to earth. A red line appears, bright for a moment, then dusty. You wipe it on cloth and continue. There is skill in this labour, though the system refuses to honour it properly. Fast pickers know where to look, how to move, how to protect fingers, how to balance speed and cleanliness. Skilled cultivation requires judgment about weather, soil, planting times, weeds, pests, and ripeness. Enslaved workers carried agricultural knowledge that helped create the wealth claimed by others. The field remembers whose hands understood it. Late in the day, shadows lengthen across the rows. The heat loosens slightly, though your body remains full of it. The sack is dragged toward the weighing place, heavy and reluctant. Cotton spills in pale lumps, light by the handful and astonishing by the pile. It is weighed, noted, and handled as property. The person who picked it stands nearby, also treated as property by law. History sometimes arranges its cruelties with unbearable neatness. You smell the cotton more strongly near the pile. It is dry, faintly sweet, dusty, and warm from the field. Bits of leaf and stem cling within the fibre. Later, ginning will separate seed from lint more efficiently than hand labour once could. That machine helped make short staple cotton profitable across much of the inland south. Its mechanical cleverness became tied to massive human suffering. Progress, unfortunately, is not always moral. The day begins to release you, though not gently. Shoulders ache, fingers sting. Your feet feel thick with dirt. Sweat cools in the breeze and leaves your shirt unpleasantly clingy. The field that looked mild at dawn now appears enormous, conquered only in pieces and never for long. Cotton will wait for tomorrow with the patience of a tax collector, yet the evening light softens even this. Gold spills along the plants and turns the dust luminous. The tree line darkens into a purple-green wall. Birds cross overhead, quick and small. For one brief minute, the field becomes beautiful again. It is a difficult beauty, because you know what it costs. Still, the eye receives it. The heart may refuse, but the eye receives it. You walk back along the row with the smell of cotton clinging to your hands. The ground is cooling underfoot. Cicadas fade, and the first crickets begin testing their instruments in the grass. The day's labour has entered your muscles, your palms, your breathing, and the slow heaviness behind your eyes. Around you, the land settles into dusk, carrying both its wealth and its wounds in silence. The cotton plants stand behind you, pale in the failing light. Their open bowls catch the last glow like scraps of cloud snagged on stems. You feel the strap mark across your shoulder, the dust at your ankles, the burr scratch on your hand. You hear a pot being moved somewhere near the cabins, and the sound seems to call the body away from the field. The day has taken much. Night begins to gather what remains. By the river road, the world feels wider than the field, though the dust is just as ambitious. You stand where wagon tracks run between trees, pressed deep by wheels, hooves, rain, and repetition. The air smells of damp wood, horse sweat, river mud, and crushed leaves warming under the sun. Somewhere beyond the screen of trees, water moves with a low brown patience, carrying news, cargo, and trouble. You hear the road before you see anyone on it. Harness buckles jingle. A wheel complains softly in a rut. A mule snorts. then shakes its head hard enough to rattle the trace chains. The sound comes nearer through the green shade. Then a wagon appears, slow and practical, loaded with sacks, a barrel, and one man sitting high with a hat pulled low. He lifts 2 fingers in greeting, which is about the correct amount of enthusiasm for heat. Roads in Mississippi can be difficult companions. In dry weather they become dust. In wet weather they become mud with strong opinions. A trip that looks small on a map can stretch into hours of jolting, slipping, waiting, and persuading animals who have developed philosophical objections. River travel is often easier, which is why waterways matter so deeply here. The Mississippi River is not scenery. It is movement, market, rumour, and power. You walk toward a landing where the trees open. The river appears wide and heavy, its surface brown-green under the afternoon light. It smells alive and old, full of silt, rotting vegetation, fish, and distant places. Driftwood nudges the bank. Mosquitoes rise from the damp edge in a whining little congregation. They are deeply committed to their work. No one admires commitment quite so much when it bites. A steamboat whistle sounds far off, faint at first, then spreading through the humid air. The note seems too grand for the quiet trees. It carries a promise of speed, though steamboats are not always as graceful as their advertisements suggest. They snag, burn, explode, delay, and overcharge with impressive confidence. Still, compared with a road after rain, a steamboat may look like civilization wearing a clean collar. By 1850, steamboats had transformed travel and commerce along the Mississippi River and its tributaries. Cotton could move from plantations to river landings, then onward to New Orleans and beyond. Goods, letters, newspapers, travellers, preachers, gamblers, doctors, and salesmen moved with it. The river tied isolated farms to global trade. It also carried the latest arguments from places many people would never visit. At the landing, men wait in loose shade. Some stand near bales wrapped and marked for shipment. Others lean against posts, pretending not to listen while listening very carefully. A boy holds a rope and watches the water. 2 women pass with baskets, their steps steady on the uneven ground. Nobody here is idle exactly. Waiting is work when the thing awaited controls money, supplies, or news. A newspaper has arrived, folded and creased from many hands. It may be days old, maybe weeks. Freshness is a fragile quality in the countryside. The paper smells of ink, damp, and tobacco from someone's coat pocket. One man reads aloud in a voice that enjoys itself too much. He speaks of Washington, of debates, of territories, of California, of fugitive slave laws, of compromise. The words drift over the landing like smoke from someone else's fire. The compromise of 1850 is being shaped in distant political rooms, but its meaning reaches the South in nervous pieces. It involves California entering as a free state, territorial questions in the West, slave trade rules in the national capital, and a harsher law concerning fugitives from slavery. The details are legal and political, yet the fear they create is intimate. Law may be written far away, but it can knock on a nearby door. You see how people listen differently. A planter hears one set of concerns, a merchant hears another. An enslaved man standing near the bales hears something else entirely, though his face gives little away. His hands rest on coarse rope, still and calm. The words about fugitives move through the hot air, and nobody asks what they feel like inside his chest. Official conversation often has very poor manners. News travels by formal routes and by hidden ones. Letters come sealed and carried. Newspapers pass from town to plantation, from store to tavern, from saddlebag to parlour. Preachers bring reports along with scripture. Boatmen share stories over meals. Peddlers sell needles, cloth, and information, all with varying quality. A rumour may ride faster than a horse because it never stops to drink. You follow the sound of voices toward a small store near the landing. It is part warehouse, part shop, part gossip mill, and part theatre for men who believe sitting on barrels is a profession. The porch boards are warm under your feet. Inside, the smell changes sharply. Molasses, coffee, leather, tobacco, salt fish, gun oil, a new cloth crowd together in the air. The mixture is strong enough to qualify as a local government. Shelves hold goods that seem ordinary and precious at once. Needles, thread, tin cups, coarse fabric, sugar in a cone, nails in a keg, a few ribbons, bright as trapped birds. Barrels of flour and salt stand open behind the counter. The storekeeper keeps accounts in a ledger, writing names and numbers with slow suspicion. Credit is the invisible rope running through the room, binding planters, merchants, factors, and labourers in different ways. Cotton does not become money instantly. It moves through credit systems, factors, shipping, storage, sale, and debt. Planters often borrow against future crops, buying supplies before harvest. A good year can still leave obligations. A bad year can tighten them mercilessly. The wealth displayed by plantation society often rests on risk, speculation, and the forced labour of people who receive none of the reward. Very elegant, if one ignores morality completely. Outside the store, a preacher has arrived on horseback. His coat is dusty, and his face shines with sweat. He drinks from a dipper and thanks the woman who offers it. He carries religious words, certainly, but also news from other communities, weddings, deaths, revivals, illnesses, sales, disappearances, quarrels, and warnings travel with him. In rural regions, a travelling preacher can become a walking newspaper with hymns attached. You hear him speak softly with an older man beneath a tree. The words are too low to catch fully, but names pass between them. Names matter. A name spoken in one county may stir fear in another. A name attached to a sale, a debt, a runaway notice, or a marriage may change the shape of a family. On paper, names can be misspelled, shortened, erased, or reduced. In memory, they become anchors. A quirky tidbit lingers near the river landing. Steamboat captains sometimes competed by racing, pushing engines dangerously to win pride, passengers, or freight contracts. People cheered these contests because humans have always enjoyed watching expensive machines behave irresponsibly. Boiler explosions were a real danger, and regulations struggled to keep pace. Progress travelled with steam, noise, profit, and a remarkable talent for making people stand too close. The boat finally comes into view, rounding a bend with smoke trailing from its stacks. Its paddle wheel churns the water into foam. The deck is crowded with motion. Barrels roll, men shout, ropes swing, and the engine beats with a deep, mechanical pulse you feel in your ribs. The smell of coal smoke or wood smoke drifts over the bank, mixing with river damp and hot tar. The whole thing seems alive, impatient, and slightly rude. Passengers look down from the deck. Some wear fine coats despite the heat, which suggests either determination or poor judgment. Others carry bundles, trunks, or carpet bags. A woman shades her face with a bonnet and watches the landing without expression. A child points at the shore. On the lower deck, workers move under harsher conditions, loading, unloading, lifting, hauling, and vanishing into smoke and noise. Cotton bales wait like pale, wrapped bodies on the bank. They're heavy, dense, and valuable. Men roll and lever them toward the boat using hooks, poles, shoulders, and shouted timing. The work requires strength and coordination. A bale slipping at the wrong moment can crush a foot or throw a man into the mud. The river accepts mistakes without ceremony. You stand close enough to feel spray touch your face when the paddle wheel churns. The droplets are warm and faintly gritty. The landing mud sucks at boots and bare feet alike. Ropes slap against posts. A clerk calls out marks. Someone curses softly, then remembers public dignity and replaces it with a cough. Very refined. The river has heard worse. Letters are passed ashore in packets. A few newspapers change hands quickly. A merchant receives a crate and inspects it with tense hope. Goods from far places have arrived, though far places are not always glamorous once packed in straw. A bolt of printed cloth appears, its colours startling against the brown dock. People look at it with interest. Cloth carries news too, in pattern, price, and possibility. You notice a young enslaved woman watching the printed cloth from a few steps away. Her gaze is brief, careful, and unreadable. Perhaps she imagines a head wrap. Perhaps she notes who buys it. Perhaps she simply enjoys the colour before work calls again. A historian cannot enter that thought. Some silences must be honoured rather than filled like empty shelves. Scholars continue to debate how political news was understood among enslaved communities in rural areas. Some evidence suggests that many enslaved people closely followed national events through overheard readings, travel networks, black boatmen, church gatherings, and private conversation. Yet the depth and speed of information varied by location and restriction. It is clear, though, that people denied formal power were not denied attention. They listened because survival required listening. The boat does not stay long. Time at a landing cost money, and money is a nervous creature. Freight moves, passengers shift, last messages are shouted, and the whistle cries again. Ropes are loosened. The paddle wheel turns. The boat pulls away, leaving churning water, smoke smell, and a wake that slaps against the bank. The river closes behind it as if nothing happened. Rivers are excellent at appearing innocent. Dust rises from the road as wagons prepare to leave. The landing begins to empty, but the news remains. It follows people home in pockets, mouths, memories, and worried glances. It travels toward cabins, kitchens, porches, fields, and dining rooms. By night, one printed paragraph may become 10 versions. Some will be wrong, some will be useful, some will be dangerous because they are true. You walk back under trees where cicadas grind in the heat. The road seems narrower now, yet more connected to everything. A crow calls from a dead branch. Spanish moss hangs in still grey strips from nearby limbs, soft-looking but dry under the fingers. The smell of the river fades behind you, replaced by dust, pine resin, and animal sweat. Your shirt clings to your back. Your steps find the wagon ruts automatically. Along the way, you pass a small group resting beside a fence. One person carries a letter tucked inside clothing, folded small and handled carefully. Another repeats a headline from memory, changing a word and then correcting it. A third says nothing, but listens with lowered eyes. Words have weight here. They can comfort, frighten, instruct, betray, or travel farther than intended. A rumour rises that someone nearby may be sold because of debt. Nobody knows whether it is true. That is the cruelty of rumour. It hurts before facts arrive. Debt, cotton prices, inheritance disputes, and punishment could all threaten families held in slavery. Legal ownership turned human bonds into assets that could be divided. The knowledge hangs over conversations like storm air, even when the sky is clear. Yet not all news is heavy. Someone mentions a wedding in another settlement. Someone else reports that a famously stubborn mule has thrown a man into a ditch, which improves the afternoon considerably. Laughter moves lightly, then fades. Joy here is not ignorance. It is resistance of a quieter kind, a refusal to let sorrow claim every chair in the room. As evening lowers, the river road darkens under trees. Fireflies begin to show in the ditches, blinking green and gold over wet grass. Their light appears and vanishes so softly it seems like thought itself. The first crickets tune their hidden instruments. The road no longer carries wagons. It carries memory, gossip, and the last warmth of the day. You turn toward the cluster of cabins and distant outbuildings. Smoke rises again from cooking fires. Voices begin to gather in low tones. Whatever arrived by river now enters the night, changed by every mouth that speaks it. Washington becomes a whisper near a hearth. New Orleans becomes a price mentioned beside a bucket. A steamboat whistle becomes a child's imitation, high and silly, before an elder hushes it. The fields lie beyond, dark and waiting, but your attention rests on the moving life between them. News has travelled over water, mud, paper, rope, and breath. It has carried profit for some, warning for others, and uncertainty for all. You feel the day's dust on your ankles and the river's damp still lingering in your nose. Overhead, the sky deepens to indigo. The road fades behind you. But the rumours continue walking. Night gathers around the yard in soft layers, and the first song begins almost too quietly to notice. It is only a hum at first, low in the throat, shaped between tired breaths. The sound rises from someone seated near a doorway, where firelight reaches the face and leaves the rest in shadow. Crickets keep their steady fiddle outside. Frogs answer from the wet ground beyond the trees. You sit near the edge of the light, where the warmth touches one side of your body and the dark touches the other. The air smells of wood smoke, damp grass, sweat drying in cloth, and a little sweetness from crushed leaves underfoot. A breeze moves through the yard, carrying the faint scent of river mud from far away. It passes over your cheek like a cool hand that cannot stay. The humming becomes a line of melody. Then another voice joins it. The words are soft, not performed for strangers, not polished for a parlour, not meant to flatter anyone with clean gloves. They move slowly, with small bends in the notes, stretching sorrow and hope until both seem to share the same breath. You feel the song before you understand it. It settles in your chest, gentle and heavy. Music in enslaved communities carries many kinds of meaning. It can mark worship, labour, mourning, warning, play, memory, and endurance. Some songs use Christian language, while also holding older African patterns of rhythm, call, response, and repetition. A line may be sung by one person, then answered by others, creating a circle of sound. Nobody needs printed music. The body remembers the path. A voice calls, another answers. The pattern moves across the yard like firelight moving along a wall. One singer begins with a phrase, and the group responds, slightly different each time. A child imitates the rhythm under their breath, not yet sure of the words. An elder corrects the tune with a glance rather than a lecture. Lectures, after all, are what people use when a raised eyebrow fails. Here, the eyebrow still performs admirably. You hear hands pat knees in quiet time. Someone taps a heel against packed earth. The rhythm is not loud, but it is firm enough to gather bodies together. A tin cup gives a tiny clink when moved aside. The sound folds into the song and disappears. In the dark beyond the cabin, insects pulse so steadily that their noise becomes part of the music, as if the night itself has joined the chorus. The song speaks of crossing water, of a far home, of burdens being lifted, of a road that opens where no road appears. These images belong to scripture, but they may also belong to lived longing. Rivers can mean baptism, escape, death, boundary, or deliverance. A promised land can be heaven, memory, a free state, or a place inside the mind where no one holds a bill of sale. Meanings do not stand politely in single file. Historians often discuss spirituals as songs of faith and survival, though many of the best-known versions were written down later. In 1850, you are listening to live-in music before collectors, concert halls, and printed arrangements reshape it. The melodies may differ from what later generations know. The heart of the practice is already present. However, in shared singing, flexible lines, and the quiet strength of voices answering voices, a quirky bit of folk belief lives near the sound. Some people say a song sung at the wrong moment can call up weather, stir spirits, or draw attention from forces better left bored. Others believe certain tunes should not be sung casually, because words have weight when carried into darkness. That may sound superstitious to a smug daylight mind. At night, beside trees full of hidden wings, smugness becomes less athletic. You watch a young man lift his head and begin a livelier tune. The rhythm changes, and tired shoulders loosen slightly. It is not a dance exactly. Not here. Not with everyone watching and the hour uncertain. Yet feet begin to mark time. A woman smiles into the firelight, then looks away quickly. A boy pats a rhythm against his own leg, proud of staying nearly correct. Nearly correct is still a family achievement. The melody bends toward humour now. A verse teases a lazy animal, a bad cook, or a person who talks too much when the work is waiting. The names are changed, because peace is useful. Laughter slips through the group in low waves. One person pretends offence with great dignity and absolutely no credibility. The song has made room for play, which is no small thing. Music is a shelter that can be carried inside the body. Nobody can lock it in a storehouse. Nobody can measure it properly on a scale. It can be punished, restricted, mocked, or forbidden. But it keeps finding small cracks through which to breathe. A tune may sleep in the memory all day, then rise when darkness gives it cover. You hear that rising now, unhurried and alive. Not all songs are sung openly. Some are murmured while walking, whispered over a cradle, or shaped without words at all. A work song in the field can pace motion and reduce loneliness. A lullaby can soothe a child and the adult singing it. A hymn can turn fear into something shared. A playful chant can let irritation escape without breaking the fragile peace of the evening. You notice how the singers listen to one another. The strongest voice does not always lead. Sometimes an elder begins, thin-voiced but certain. Sometimes a younger person carries the line when another grows tired. Sometimes the group changes the ending without discussion. This is not music frozen on a page. It is music negotiated in breath, memory, and need. It changes because life changes. Scholars continue to debate the exact relationship between African musical traditions and the spirituals later documented in the 19th century. Some emphasize rhythmic structures, call and response, blue notes, and communal performance rooted in West and Central African practice. Others warn that evidence is fragmentary and filtered through observers with limited understanding. The safest truth is also the richest one. These songs carry blended histories shaped by violence, creativity, faith and adaptation. The night deepens, and the fire burns lower. Faces become harder to see, but voices grow clearer. Without bright light, the ear becomes brave. You hear the rasp in one singer's throat, the breath before a phrase, the slight delay when the group enters together. The sound is imperfect, which is why it feels human. Perfect music can be impressive. Imperfect music knows where you live. A mother rocks a small child against her shoulder. The child's eyelids fall, open, then fall again. The song around them softens, adjusting itself without anyone announcing the change. A lullaby begins, tucked inside the remains of a hymn. The words speak of rest, wings, quiet roads, and a morning that will come. The mother's hand moves slowly over the child's back, patting time into sleep. You feel the ground beneath you cooling. The packed earth holds the day's heat in low pockets, while the surface grows damp. Grass brushes your ankle. A mosquito whines near your ear and is slapped away with unnecessary drama, though honestly deserved. Smoke drifts low, and for a moment your eyes water. The scent of ash thickens, then thins when the breeze shifts. Near the cabins, someone produces a small homemade instrument. It may be a fiddle, a banjo, or a simple rhythm piece made from what is available. Early banjos in the Americas developed from African gourd instruments, gradually changing materials and form across time and region. By the mid-19th century, banjos are known in black musical life and also, in distorted form, on white minstrel stages. That second part is an ugly theft wearing a grin. Here, the instrument is not a caricature. It is wood, string, skin, hand, and memory. A few notes sound, plucked softly so they do not carry too far. The tone is warm, nasal, and intimate. It threads through the voices rather than conquering them. People lean in slightly, not because the sound is grand, but because it belongs to the circle. Belonging changes how music enters the ear. The tune turns minor, or something close to it, though that word belongs to theory more than the yard. You feel the sadness in the interval without needing to name it. A woman sings of being watched over. A man answers with a line about walking through trouble. Another voice enters late, low and rough, making the harmony deeper. The whole sound seems to hover between the cabins and the trees. You wonder how far it travels. To the fence, perhaps. To the edge of the field. Maybe to the larger house if the wind leans that way. Music can comfort, but it can also expose. The singers know this. Their volume has boundaries. Their joy has discipline. Even beauty must learn caution under power. That knowledge makes the song more moving, not less. A passing cloud covers the moon. Darkness thickens. For a few breaths, the fire is the only light. Sparks lift from the coals and vanish. The singers continue without hesitation, as if the tune itself can see. Then the moon returns, silvering the yard, touching the roof lines, catching a hanging gourd and a bucket rim. The scene looks still, but sound keeps moving through it. The night is not empty. It is listening. Some songs carry coded meanings, though modern listeners sometimes imagine codes everywhere. It is tempting to turn every river into a map, every train into a signal, every word into secret instruction. Sometimes that may be true. Sometimes a river is also a river, and heaven is also heaven. Historians remain cautious about which songs served as direct escape messages, since much evidence was recorded later. Carefulness protects the people whose songs were more than puzzles. Still, you can understand why double meanings mattered. Under surveillance, the plain speech could be dangerous. Metaphor gave breath more room. A song about travelling might hold longing no listener could safely challenge. A line about deliverance might comfort one person and instruct another. The same words could pass through different minds with different cargo. That is the cleverness of song. It can carry more than it declares. The livelier rhythm returns for a while. Someone claps softly, not with full palms, but with fingers meeting the base of the hand. It makes a dry, quick sound. Feet shift, a shoulder dips. One elderly woman gives a look that suggests she once moved better than anyone here and may still prove it if provoked. Nobody provokes her. Wisdom has entered the yard. The music draws people from separate corners of thought. For a little while, the lonely become less alone. The anxious find a pattern larger than fear. The exhausted find breath moving with other breath. You feel your own breathing adjust, drawn into the slow call and answer. The body loves rhythm because rhythm promises that something will continue. Even the crickets understand this, though they are dreadful at modesty. A final hymn begins with no instrument. The first note is held longer than expected, soft but steady. Then the answer comes, warmer and fuller. The words drift toward the stars, toward trees, toward whatever listening presence the singers trust tonight. Faith here is not simple. It does not erase suffering or explain it neatly. It gives language to endurance, and sometimes that language becomes a small boat on dark water. The fire is mostly embers now, pulsing under grey ash. The smoke smells cooler. Around you, bodies relax into stillness. One singer coughs lightly and laughs under their breath. Another says the last line should have been higher, and someone else says it was high enough for any reasonable angel. Quiet laughter follows. Even heaven apparently should not become greedy. The last notes fade slowly. They do not stop so much as settle into the insect hum. For a while, Nobody speaks. Silence arrives with dignity, taking the place music has prepared for it. You hear frogs, crickets, leaves, and the soft breath of sleeping children. The yard feels changed, not safer exactly, not freer in law, but fuller. The dark has been answered. You look toward the cotton field, pale under moonlight beyond the cabins. During the day, the land demands labour. At night, sound moves over it without asking permission. The songs do not uproot the plants or break the ledges. They do something quieter. They keep memory alive, teach children how voices can meet and make sorrow share space with wit, faith, and stubborn beauty. Your eyelids grow heavy as the final hum returns inside you. It is no longer outside only. It lives behind your ribs, matching the crickets, the slow breathing nearby, and the last red glow at the hearth. The night folds itself around the yard. Somewhere, a child dreams with one hand open. Somewhere, an elder remembers a tune no one has written down. The silence holds the music gently and does not let it disappear. The hearth has become a small red cave, and you sit where the shadows can reach you. The cabin walls seem closer now, as if darkness has leaned in to hear better. Outside, crickets stitch their thin music through the grass, while leaves drag softly against one another. The air smells of ash, old wood, damp soil, and the faint bitter scent of herbs hanging near the rafters. Someone takes a coal and nudges it back into the embers. A quick glow blooms, lighting hands, knees, and the lower half of a face. Then the brightness sinks again. The story begins in that half-light, not with an announcement, but with a voice saying that long ago, when animals still knew how to talk properly, a rabbit made trouble for everyone. Of course he did. Rabbits are often more ambitious than their size recommends. You listen as the voice shapes the little trickster into being. He is quick, nervous, clever, hungry, and deeply irresponsible in a charming way. He fools a stronger animal, escapes a trap, steals what he should not, and survives because speed and wit outrun power for one more day. The children lie still, but their eyes shine. They know exactly when the rabbit has gone too far. They also hope he keeps going. Stories of clever animals have deep roots across many cultures. In the American South, tales of Brewer rabbit and similar tricksters carried African, native, and European elements, changing with each teller. For enslaved communities, trickster stories could entertain children, sharpen memory, and offer sly reflections on weakness facing strength. They did not need to explain themselves. A fox, a bear, and a rabbit could say plenty. The elder's voice rises slightly when the fox speaks, then thins when the rabbit answers. Each animal gets a posture, a rhythm, a foolish dignity. The fox boasts too much, which is always a literary warning. The rabbit flatters him with a seriousness no honest creature should trust. A child near your elbow covers a laugh with both hands. The room warms around the joke. Even the fire seems amused. The tale moves through a field, a briar patch, a muddy road, and a place where moonlight shines on a stream. You can almost smell the wet clay and crushed cane. You can feel the briars snagging at cloth. The rabbit begs not to be thrown where he most wants to go, and the fox, tragically blessed with confidence, does exactly the wrong thing. Several listeners exhale together. Justice, for once, has excellent comic timing. Then the room grows quieter. Another story follows, slower and older in feeling. It concerns a traveller at night who meets someone on the road who seems ordinary until the feet are noticed. Wrong feet are never a good sign. The stranger's voice is smooth, too smooth. The path grows colder. Owls call from trees. The traveller remembers a charm taught by a grandmother, and the danger passes by without taking a name. Belief lives differently in darkness. In daylight, a person may laugh at haints, spirits, witches, signs, and warnings. At night, when the woods breathe and every stump becomes a crouching figure, laughter grows selective. You feel that change in the cabin. Nobody insists too strongly that such things are false. That would be bad manners toward the unknown. Also, nobody wants to invite a demonstration. Haint stories, protective charms, and weather signs formed part of a broad folk world in the 19th century South. Beliefs varied widely by family, region, religion, and ancestry. Some practices drew from African spiritual traditions, some from European folk customs, some from native knowledge, and many from local experience. The mixture was not neat. Real culture rarely behaves like a labelled cabinet in a museum. Near the hearth, a woman reaches up and touches a small bundle hanging near the wall. It may hold herbs, roots, a thread, a button, or something else with meaning known only to those who made it. You do not ask. Some objects are private even when visible. The firelight catches the bundle's edge, then lets it fall back into shadow. It seems smaller than a fist and heavier than it looks. A quirky belief drifts into the conversation when someone mentions turning a broom upside down to send away an unwanted visitor. Another person says salt can trouble certain spirits, while a third claims an old horseshoe keeps bad luck from settling too comfortably. The exact rules vary, and everyone seems prepared to correct everyone else. Folk belief, like cooking, invites strong opinions from people holding no measuring cup. Someone laughs softly and says a charm is only as useful as the sense behind it. Another answers that sense is fine, but sense alone never stopped a witch from riding a sleeping person at night. The room accepts both arguments without choosing sides. That is often how belief works. Practical minds can still leave a door slightly protected. Skepticism is easier when the wind is not scratching at the shutters. You hear the wind now. It moves against the cabin with a low hush, pushing smoke sideways for a moment. The flame bends, straightens, and flickers along the underside of the pothook. Outside, a branch taps the roof with slow patience. Tap, pause, tap. A child turns their face toward the wall. Nobody says they're afraid. The room politely understands. The next tale is about signs in the weather. A ring around the moon means rain. Perhaps. Birds flying low may warn of a storm. Ants moving in a certain way suggest water coming. Pain in old bones can speak before clouds arrive. Much of this knowledge comes from observation, not fantasy. People who live close to weather study its moods with urgent attention. Weather is not small talk when crops, roads, fever, and hunger depend on it. You step in your mind outside the cabin, guided by the speaker's words. The moon hangs behind thin cloud, blurred at the edges. The yard smells wet already, though no rain has fallen. Leaves show pale undersides when the wind turns them. Somewhere beyond the cabins, water stands in a ditch, holding reflections of stars broken by insects. The night feels alert, as if waiting for a decision. In 1850, formal meteorology exists but is still developing. Rural people rely heavily on almanacs, memory, seasonal patterns, and local signs. Some signs are useful, some are coincidence, and some become true because people remember the hits more fondly than the misses. Human nature keeps a generous account book for its own predictions. Still, when the clouds arrive correctly, the sign-teller enjoys a well-earned moment of glory. Historians and folklorists still debate how to interpret many recorded southern folk beliefs. Some written accounts were collected decades later, often by outsiders who misunderstood or exaggerated what they heard. Other accounts preserve valuable traces of daily thought, resistance, healing, humour, and spiritual life. The challenge is to avoid two mistakes. One is dismissing belief as nonsense. The other is pretending we understand every symbol completely. The fire gives a small collapse, and ash slides inward with a sighing sound. Someone adds a stick no thicker than a wrist. It catches slowly, smoking first, then glowing. The fresh wood smells green at one end, dry at the other. Its bark curls as heat takes hold. You feel warmth touch your hands again, and the room brightens just enough to show tired faces turned toward the teller. The stories become smaller now, more domestic. A woman describes a neighbour who dreamed of a lost knife and found it near a fence post the next morning. Someone else mentions a child who spoke with an unseen playmate near the spring. A man insists that his cousin once heard a cow predict company, though the cow's credentials remain unclear. This receives the amount of respect it deserves, which is not much, but not none. Dreams matter in this world. They can warn, comfort, confuse, or carry messages from the dead. A dream of water may trouble one person and reassure another. A dream of teeth, birds, or roads may be discussed in low voices while chores continue. You feel how dreams provide another language for uncertainty. When law and power refuse explanation, the sleeping mind sometimes tries to make its own. A child asks whether the dead can return. The question lands softly but changes the room. An elder answers with care. Sometimes the dead visit in dreams because love remembers the road. Sometimes a sound is only a sound. Sometimes you say a prayer and do not go looking. This answer satisfies nobody completely, which is how honest answers often behave. Mortality is close in rural 19th century life. Illness, childbirth, accidents, violence, and distance all make loss familiar. Burial practices among enslaved communities could include prayers, songs, grave goods, shells, broken pottery, plants, or personal tokens, depending on place and tradition. Even under oppression, people honoured their dead with whatever means they could claim. Memory found forms, even when resources were scarce. A small object passes from hand to hand, perhaps a pierced coin or a smooth stone. It is cool when it reaches you, worn by touch, ordinary to the eye and charged by handling. Its surface carries tiny dents. You hold it briefly and feel how personal meaning gathers inside simple things. Then you pass it along, careful not to keep it too long. Objects can belong to stories as much as people do. The room has grown sleepy, but no one wants the tales to end too abruptly. Stories are bridges from labour into rest. They let the mind walk somewhere else, while the body stays safe near the fire. They teach without sounding like instruction. They warn without naming every danger. They allow laughter to sit beside fear without either one feeling neglected. Another trickster tale returns, short and bright. This time the rabbit tries to cheat a terrapin and discovers that slow creatures may also be organised. The terrapin wins by planning ahead, which annoys the rabbit greatly. The children enjoy this with serious satisfaction. Even cleverness needs humbling now and then. Besides, it is soothing to imagine that speed is not everything, especially when you are very tired. You notice the teller's hands as much as the voice. One hand opens when a road appears. 2 fingers crook when an animal listens. A palm turns upward when the moon enters the tail. Storytelling uses the whole body, though quietly here. Gesture gives shape to words in low light. It helps children remember and adults feel the old lines settle into place. The atmosphere thickens with smoke and drowsiness. The scent of herbs grows stronger as heat rises toward the rafters. Mint, dried leaves, and old soot blend into something almost medicinal. Your blanket scratches your wrist. The floor is firm under your hip. A child's breathing becomes deep and slow nearby. Outside, frogs call in the ditch, round notes rising through the dark. The teller lowers their voice. Now the story concerns a firefly who carried a coal from the stars. It is not a grand tale, only a little explanation for blinking lights in summer grass. The firefly hides its spark from greedy night creatures and shows it only in flashes. You smile because the science is incorrect and the feeling is perfect. Some truths arrive dressed as errors and stay for supper. Fireflies pulse beyond the doorway as if supporting the argument. Their green lights appear near the ground, then vanish. They seem to answer the embers, earth stars speaking to hearth stars. The night feels less empty with the minute. The children who are still awake watch without moving. No one says much. The little lights perform better without commentary. The last tale carries a warning about wandering too far from home after dark. It mentions a crossroads, a whispering tree, and a rider heard but not seen. Such tales keep children close, which is sensible. They also give shape to adult fears that cannot be spoken plainly. Roads can bring danger, patrols, strangers, sails, and separation. A ghost in a story may be easier to name than a living threat outside it. Your eyelids grow heavy as the voice slows. Words stretch and soften. The fire makes small clicking sounds, like a mouth preparing to sleep. Smoke drifts toward a crack in the roof. The room has travelled far without leaving its walls, into briars, roads, storms, graves, dreams, and sky-lit insects. It returns now to the hearth, where the coals pulse with the patience of a breathing animal. Silence does not fall, it settles. Someone whispers a few final words about keeping shoes turned properly and not sweeping after dark unless you mean to sweep luck away. A drowsy voice objects that luck should help with its own housekeeping. This earns one last low laugh. Then laughter fades into breathing, and breathing joins the crickets outside. You sit in the dim red hush, surrounded by stories still hovering close to the ceiling. They cling to the rafters with the herbs and smoke. They rest in the corners, near the tools, beside the sleeping children, under the folded cloths. They are not written, but they are not weak. They live because they are told, remembered, changed, and told again. The hearth glows lower. The night beyond the doorway grows deeper, but it no longer feels empty. It holds rabbits, foxes, clever terrapins, wrong-footed strangers, weather signs, watchful ancestors, and fireflies carrying stolen star coals. It holds fear, yes, but also imagination. It holds danger, but also laughter. You draw the blanket closer and let the room darken around you, while the last ember keeps one red eye open. The path toward the workyard is packed hard from many feet, and you follow it through the warm dark. Firelight slips from cabin doors behind you, while a larger glow waits ahead near the kitchen building. The air changes as you move. It smells less of field dust now, and more of grease, soap, damp wood, old ashes, and stored grain. Somewhere close, a hen complains in her sleep, which seems unnecessary but sincere. You pass a wash area where tubs lean upside down against a wall. Their rims catch the moonlight in dull curves. A paddle rests nearby, worn smooth from striking wet cloth against wood. The ground around the tubs is uneven and slick in patches, hardened where water has dried, soft where it still lingers. You can smell lye soap, sour laundry, and the faint mildew of fabric that never dries as quickly as anyone wishes. Household labour is never only inside a house. It spills across yards, sheds, kitchens, dairies, smokehouses, gardens, wells, and storerooms. On plantations, enslaved people with different skills might cook, wash, sew, nurse, drive, carpenter, garden, care for animals, and carry messages. Some worked mainly in fields, while others moved between domestic spaces and outdoor tasks. Each kind of work held its own pressures, privileges, dangers, and watching eyes. You pause near the kitchen, a separate building set apart for heat and fire safety. Its doorway glows orange. Inside, the room is hotter than the night itself, which is quite an achievement in Mississippi. A large hearth dominates one wall, blackened by years of smoke. Pots hang from hooks, skillets lean against brick. A table stands in the centre, scarred by knives, flour, salt, and endless hands. A woman stands at the table, shaping dough by touch. Her fingers move quickly, pressing, folding, turning, dusting. Flour clings to her knuckles and shines pale against her skin. Another person lifts a lid from a pot and steam rolls upward with the smell of beans, onion, and pork. The warmth hits your face. Your shirt sticks to your back. The kitchen feels like a weather system with opinions. Cooking for a plantation household can mean producing meals for the enslaver's family. Guests, children, hired workers, and sometimes portions for enslaved people, depending on local practice. The labour begins early and stretches late. It requires planning, fire management, timing, storage knowledge, and the ability to make imperfect supplies behave politely. That last skill may be the greatest of all. Ingredients are often less obedient than cookbooks suggest. On a shelf, you see jars, crocks, and covered bowls. Some hold preserves, some drippings, some pickled vegetables, some things best identified by the person who placed them there. A cloth covers rising dough. A bundle of dried peppers hangs beside onions braided on a cord. The room smells rich and crowded, with smoke settling into every surface. Even the ceiling seems seasoned. A mainstream fact rests in the very arrangement of the place. Large plantation homes in the South often depended on detached kitchens, partly to reduce heat and fire risk in the main house. These kitchens also created separate work zones where enslaved cooks laboured under demanding expectations. The food that appeared gracefully on dining tables required long hours beside smoke, flame, heavy iron, and close supervision. You follow a narrow path from the kitchen toward the smokehouse. The door is shut with care because meat means wealth, survival, and temptation for every hungry creature with legs, wings, or nerve. The smell seeps through the cracks anyway. Salted pork, hickory smoke, cured ham, old fat, and cool dark wood combine into something powerful. It is both delicious and severe, like a sermon delivered by Bacon. Inside such buildings, meat may hang from rafters, preserved by salt, smoke, time, and watchfulness. The process requires knowledge of weather, cuts, brining, smoking, storage, and spoilage. Too little salt invites rot. Too much makes the food nearly a mineral. Rats, insects, and theft must be guarded against. Hunger makes locked doors appear in many places. Morality becomes more complicated when the stomach is giving legal advice. Nearby stands the dairy or milk room, cooler if the design and luck allow. Crocks sit in shallow water, butter moulds, churns, and skimmers may rest on shelves. Milk souring, cream rising, butter coming, cheese setting, all require attention. The smells are softer here, but not simple. Sweet milk, sour milk, wood, water, and clean cloth make a pale atmosphere. You hear a drip from somewhere, steady and small. Women's labour often fills these spaces, though men and children may also help depending on household needs. Domestic work is sometimes described as lighter than field labour, but that word can mislead badly. Heat, lifting, long hours, surveillance, emotional demands, and closeness to the enslaver's family could make house labour exhausting and dangerous. Being near power did not mean being protected by it. Sometimes it meant being studied more closely. You cross the yard toward the main house, keeping to the darker edge. It rises beyond the trees with windows lit from within. The building is larger, raised, perhaps with a porch and columns, or perhaps plainer, depending on the owner's wealth and taste. Not every plantation house is the grand white mansion of later imagination. Some are comfortable but modest. Some are expanded in pieces. Myth loves columns more than account books do. The steps creak under a servant's foot as a tray is carried inside. You glimpse polished wood, pale walls, framed pictures, and lamplight steadier than firelight. The air from within smells of beeswax, coffee, tobacco, perfume, and cooked meat. A clock ticks somewhere with expensive confidence. Every room seems arranged to suggest order, yet the order depends on people moving quietly behind it, opening doors, lifting dishes, clearing plates, and remembering preferences. You stand near the threshold and hear dinner conversation through a partly open window. Voices discuss weather, crop expectations, a letter from town, and the irritating price of supplies. A laugh follows, round and careless. Silver touches china with bright little clicks. The sound is delicate, almost pretty. It is also a sound built on labour far beyond the table. History often hides its machinery behind nice plates. A young enslaved girl waits near a sideboard, eyes lowered, hands still. She must be present enough to respond and invisible enough to comfort those who command her presence. That is a terrible kind of skill. She listens without appearing to listen. She watches without seeming to watch. She knows who wants more coffee, who dislikes a draught, who becomes sharp after wine, who speaks kindly only when watched by guests. The emotional work inside domestic service is difficult to measure. It includes anticipation, restraint, memory, performance, and silence. A person may know a household's secrets while being denied the right to speak freely about their own life. They may care for children who will grow into authority over them. They may nurse the sick, dress the well, carry messages, and endure blame for mistakes made by others. No ledger fully records this. A quirky tidbit hides among the table manners. In wealthier households, elaborate rules could govern which fork, spoon, plate, or glass suited a course, though frontier reality often smudged refinement. People might display imported china beside local pottery, polished silver beside rough repairs. Respectability was partly performance, and some people performed it with exhausting enthusiasm. One suspects the soup spoon never asked for such responsibility. You move away from the window and toward a sewing room or work corner connected to the household. There, fabric waits in folded stacks. Plain cloth for work garments, finer muslin, wool, linen, calico, and scraps too small to waste sit in uneven order. Needles flash in lamplight. Thread runs through fingers. The smell is dry and dusty, with hints of starch and lavender if someone has insisted on gentility. Sewing is a world of its own. Clothing must be made, altered, patched, hemmed, washed, and made again. Enslaved seamstresses could possess extraordinary skill, creating garments for enslavers, children, and sometimes their own families when permitted materials or time allowed. A dress may look effortless in a portrait, but someone cut, fitted, gathered, and stitched it. Elegance is often labour wearing a nicer hat. You touch a scrap of printed cotton between finger and thumb. It is smoother than homespun, thin and colourful in the dim light. Cotton cloth links this domestic space to the fields outside and mills far away. The same crop that abrades fingers in the field returns as fabric, dresses, shirts, curtains, and trade goods. The circle is neat, profitable, and deeply cruel. The plant keeps changing costume, but not its history. Historians still argue how much influence enslaved domestic workers could exercise within plantation households. Some evidence shows they used proximity to gather information, negotiate favours, protect kin, and shape daily routines. Other evidence warns that closeness brought vulnerability, control, and intense surveillance. Both can be true at once. Power does not become gentle because it is served on porcelain. Beyond the house, you visit the garden patch near the cabins. It is smaller, humbler, and in some ways more personal. Moonlight touches bean poles, squash leaves, herbs, and perhaps a few peppers standing in dark soil. Gardens cultivated by enslaved people could supplement rations, provide medicinal plants, support trade, and offer a measure of skillful independence. The space might be limited, but knowledge makes small ground valuable. You smell tomato leaves when your hand brushes them, sharp and green. Basil or mint releases a cooler scent under your fingers. The soil is damp near the roots and gritty at the surface. A gourd vine sprawls with total confidence, clearly unaware of property lines. Garden plants often behave like they own the moonlight, and honestly, they may have a stronger claim than most people. Chickens rustle near a fence. Their bodies are warm, feathery shapes in the dark. A pig grunts from a pen and pushes its snout into the trough with wet enthusiasm. Animal care belongs to the daily web of labour too. Feeding, watering, milking, collecting eggs, cleaning pens, repairing fences, and watching for sickness all take time. Animals are wealth when healthy and chaos when free. Pigs, especially, are chaos with hooves. You pass a carpenter's shed where tools hang in shadow, a saw, auger, adze, mallet, plane, and chisels wait on pegs or shelves. Wood shavings curl on the floor, smelling sweet and dry. Skilled enslaved artisans were essential on many plantations. They built, repaired, forged, tanned, cowoopered, and crafted items that kept the place functioning. Their expertise could command respect, yet not freedom. Skill under bondage is one of history's bitterest contradictions. A man inside the shed turns a small piece of wood in his hands, checking the grain by touch. He's making a handle for a broken tool, or perhaps repairing a chair leg for the main house. His thumb follows the wood's line. The shavings fall softly. In that motion lives practical intelligence, patience, and pride. The finished object may belong legally to someone else, but the knowledge in the hand belongs to the maker. The yard between all these places feels alive with crossings. People carry buckets, trays, laundry, wood, messages, scraps, tools, and children. Some movements are commanded. Some are chosen in tiny openings between commands. A glance is exchanged near the well. A warning is murmured by the smokehouse. A child is sent to fetch thread and returns with news tucked inside the errand. The plantation is a machine, but people are not gears. You hear a bell from the main house. Sharp and small, this sound cuts through night air. Someone rises immediately. Another person pauses, listening to whether a second bell follows. Bells organize service, announce demands, summon bodies, and interrupt rest. Their sound is practical, but also symbolic. It tells everyone who expects to be answered. A bell is a tiny metal tyrant, very proud of itself. Still, within these demands, people create networks of care. A cook saves a crust for a child. A laundress shares soap knowledge with a younger girl. A carpenter repairs a stool for an elder. A gardener quietly tends a healing plant near the fence. A seamstress hides a stronger patch inside a worn garment. These acts are not always dramatic. They are the small architecture of survival. The night air cools slightly as you return toward the cabin lights. Behind you, the main house glows with controlled brightness. Ahead, smaller fires flicker lower to the ground. Between them lie kitchens, yards, sheds, pens, gardens, and paths worn by people whose work holds the entire place together. The smell of smoke follows you, mixed with soap, milk, leather, and earth. You look back once and see the plantation not as one house and one field, but as a cluster of worlds. Each world has labour, skill, knowledge, risk, and hidden feeling. Power tries to arrange them in a simple order, but life refuses to be simple. In the dark, every path carries more than footsteps. It carries food, warning, affection, fatigue, memory, and the quiet intelligence of people who know the place better than those who claim to own it. The night feels close and damp, as if the air has been folded around the cabins and tucked too tightly. You stand near a ditch where moonlight lies broken on shallow water. Mosquitoes hover above it in wavering clouds, whining with the delicate cruelty of tiny violins. The smell is sour and green, full of mud, rotting leaves, and warm standing water. Your skin prickles before anything touches it. A hand slaps an arm nearby, then another. The insects are busy. In Mississippi, heat and moisture give sickness many roads into human life. People speak of fever with a familiarity that no one wants. Chills, sweats, weakness, stomach trouble, coughs, infected cuts, bad water, and childbirth dangers all belong to the ordinary landscape of concern. Illness is not an interruption here. It is part of the season's pattern, lurking beside work, weather, insects, and exhaustion. You follow a woman carrying a small bundle of herbs toward a cabin where a child has been restless. The doorway is open for air, and the fire inside burns low to avoid adding heat. A candle stub glows near the wall, its flame small and wavering. The room smells of sweat, smoke, damp bedding, and something bitter steeping in a cup. The child lies on a pallet, hair stuck to the forehead. Someone dips a cloth into water and lays it across the child's neck. The cloth is rough, cool for only a moment, then warm again. A mother bends close and murmurs words meant as much for herself as for the child. You hear the little one breathe, shallow and uneven. Outside, frogs call from the ditch, indifferent and steady. The night keeps making noise, even when everyone inside is listening for one small breath. A mainstream historical fact rests heavily in the room. Malaria was widespread in many parts of the lower Mississippi Valley during the 19th century. People often called recurring fevers by different names, such as ague, intermittent fever, or swamp fever. They did not yet understand the full role of mosquitoes in transmission. The mosquito knew, of course, but offered no lecture, which was rude and very on brand. Medical understanding in 1850 stands between older theories and newer discoveries not yet complete. Many physicians still explain disease through miasma, the idea that bad air from swamps, decay, and filth causes sickness. Others consider contagion, climate, constitution, diet, and moral habits in complicated ways. Germ theory has not yet transformed medicine. The air itself is treated like a suspect, and in Mississippi, it certainly looks guilty some evenings. The woman with the herbs crushes leaves between her fingers. A sharp scent rises, green and peppery. She adds them to hot water, covers the cup, and waits. Household remedies may include teas, poultices, sweats, purges, roots, barks, and prayers. Some remedies soothe, some do little, some can harm, yet the knowledge behind them is serious, built from observation, inheritance, necessity, and the hard education of living far from reliable medical help. You see other items near the hearth, a rag folded for binding, a gourd dipper, a small bottle, perhaps containing spirits, camphor, turpentine, or some other strong medicine with fierce confidence, a spoon darkened by use, a little packet tied in cloth. Every object seems ordinary until sickness enters the room. Then ordinary things become tools in a quiet battle, and the person holding them becomes very important. Enslaved healers, midwives, and nurses played essential roles in plantation communities. Their knowledge might be sought by enslaved people and enslavers alike, though the respect given to them was often tangled with control and exploitation. A healer could hold practical authority without legal freedom. A midwife could be trusted with birth while denied control over her own life. History is full of such bitter arrangements. You step outside for air, though the air is hardly innocent. The damp presses against your face. The ditch water smells stronger after midnight, as if heat has released what daylight held down. Mosquitoes find your wrists, your neck, the soft place behind your ear. Smoke from a smudge fire drifts low, made from damp leaves or green wood to discourage insects. It helps a little, which is how many victories arrive here. The smoke stings your eyes. It smells earthy and harsh. People may burn certain plants, keep fires smouldering, hang netting where possible, sleep under cloth, rub skin with grease or strong-smelling substances, or simply endure. Mosquito netting exists, but not everyone has access to it. Comfort is unevenly distributed, like nearly everything else. The insects are, at least, are democratic in appetite, though power decides who must sleep nearest the ditch. A quirky tidbit moves through the night talk. Some people believe placing a spiderweb on a cut can help stop bleeding. Others use soot, cobwebs, plant poultices, or chewed leaves for small wounds. The cobweb idea appears in many folk traditions, and clean webbing can physically help clotting in minor cases. Unfortunately, 19th century cabins are not exactly sterile laboratories. Nature offers assistance, then forgets to wash its hands. Near another doorway, an older man coughs into a cloth. The sound is deep and tearing, then quiet. Someone brings him warm water. The cabin smells of smoke, old bedding, and a medicinal bitterness that clings to the tongue. Respiratory trouble can worsen in smoky rooms, damp weather, and crowded quarters, yet fire is needed for cooking. Warmth and light, comfort and harm sometimes sit on the same stool. You hear a baby cry from a neighbouring cabin. The cry is thin at first, then angry, which everyone agrees is the healthier direction. A woman crosses the yard with practiced speed, carrying cloths against her chest. She's a midwife, or someone acting in that role. Summoned because birth is beginning or trouble is feared. The night rearranges itself around her movement. Conversations stop, doors open, someone fetches water. Childbirth in this world carries great danger. Mothers and infants face infection, hemorrhage, obstructed labour, fever, and exhaustion. Skilled midwives know positions, timing, herbs, massage, cord care, and the signs that worry should become alarm. Their work is physical, emotional, and deeply social. They manage pain, fear, privacy, and prayer at once. A good midwife deserves more respect than most generals, and far fewer statues get this right. You do not enter that cabin. Some thresholds are not yours. Instead, you wait outside near a water bow, where the wooden staves feel slick under your palm. The moon has shifted behind clouds, leaving the yard dimmer. You hear low women's voices, the splash of water, a short cry, then murmuring. A dog raises its head and decides not to interfere. Excellent judgment. For once. The frogs keep calling, as if birth, fever, and worry are all part of their regular schedule. Historians still debate how much medical authority enslaved practitioners held within plantation systems. Some records show enslavers relying on enslaved nurses, herbalists, and midwives because of their skill. Other records reveal coercion, surveillance, and punishment when care failed or displeased owners. The evidence is uneven because many healers left few written accounts in their own voices. Their work survives through fragments, memory, plantation papers, and the bodies they helped keep alive. A doctor may be called from town for certain illnesses, but that depends on distance, cost, urgency, weather, and the enslaver's decision. When a physician arrives, he may bring a black bag, bottles, lancets, calomel, quinine, opium preparations, or other treatments of the period. Some help, some harm. Some march into the room with great confidence and no measurable talent. Medicine has always had its heroes and its peacocks. Quinine, derived from cinchona bark, is one of the more useful medicines against malaria, though access, dosing, and quality vary. People may know the bitterness of bark preparations or quinine mixtures. That bitter taste becomes linked with fever seasons and desperate hope. You imagine it on the tongue, sharp and lingering. A medicine can taste like punishment and still be welcome. A young man sits on a stump, rubbing his calf where cramps have seized him after work in the heat. Muscle pain, dehydration, and exhaustion are ordinary companions in heavy agricultural labour. Someone tells him to drink slowly, not gulp. Someone else says a charm against cramp is tied in the wrong place. This becomes a mild debate because suffering apparently requires commentary. The young man looks too tired to referee. The healer returns from the feverish child and asks for more water. The request moves quickly. A girl takes the bucket to the well path. Another person follows because night paths deserve company. The rope creaks over the well pulley. The bucket drops, strikes water with a hollow splash, and comes up heavy. Wet rope smells of hemp, wood, and minerals. The water is cool against your fingers when it spills over the rim. Wells, springs, cisterns, and surface water all carry different risks. People may judge water by taste, clarity, location, and custom, but invisible dangers remain hidden. In an age before modern sanitation, contaminated water can spread disease with terrible efficiency, yet hauling cleaner water takes labour, and labour is already demanded everywhere. Health is not only biology, it is infrastructure, power, time, and who is allowed to rest. You notice the yard's geography differently now, where water collects, insects breed, where refuse gathers, smells sharpen, where cabins stand close, illness can move easily, where people are overworked, bodies have fewer reserves. The plantation landscape itself produces vulnerability. It is not simply that disease happens here. Conditions invite it, then blame the sick for weakening. Power enjoys disguising its fingerprints. Inside the fever cabin, the child's breathing has settled somewhat. Not healed, not safe, but steadier. The mother's shoulders lower a little. The healer tastes the tea with the tip of a spoon, grimaces, and nods. Bitter things often announce themselves like officials. The child is coaxed to swallow a few drops. Outside, a woman begins a quiet prayer, her voice barely above the insect hum. You feel the mood ease by a thread. Only a thread, but enough to notice. People resume small tasks, though listening continues under every movement. Someone sharpens a knife on a stone, slow and steady. Someone folds cloths. Someone carries ashes away from a hearth. The world does not stop for sickness, which is one of its less charming habits. Care must be woven through work, not placed outside it. Near the herb bundle, you recognise smells now. Mint for the stomach, willow bark perhaps for pain, sassafras or boneset, or other plants known in the region may be used in different ways. Some knowledge comes through African traditions, some through Native American exchange, some through European household medicine, and some through local experiment. The blend is practical, not tidy. Survival rarely pauses to label its sources. A moth strikes the candle flame and drops. The small sound makes everyone look. Then nothing. The flame trembles and steadies. You think about how fragile bodies are in this place, and how much effort goes into protecting them. Feeding, cooling, cleaning, binding, lifting, dosing, watching, praying, and waiting. Waiting may be the hardest treatment. It requires no tool and uses the whole soul. From the birth cabin comes a sudden newborn cry, thin and startled. The yard holds still, then releases a breath. Someone laughs softly, almost crying. Another person says the baby has lungs enough to argue with thunder. That is a good sign. The midwife's silhouette appears in the doorway, tired and solid. She asks for more clean cloth. No trumpet sound. The night simply makes room for one more human being. The joy is careful. In this world, a child born into slavery is also born into legal bondage. That knowledge sits beside the wonder of first breath, neither able to erase the other. A mother's relief, a midwife's pride, a family's tenderness, and the law's cruelty all occupy the same small hour. History does not arrange feelings neatly for our comfort. It lets them crowd together in the doorway. The feverish child sleeps now, though fever may return with the next cycle. The old man's cough has quieted. The young man's cramp eases. The newborn complains again. With admirable commitment, you stand in the yard under a cloud-torn moon and smell smoke, herbs, mud, sweat, and warm milk. The sounds around you are smaller now. Bowls being rinsed, cloth wrung out, a baby soothed, water poured carefully into a cup. You understand that healing here is not a single event. It is a network of hands moving through the night. It is knowledge passed without ceremony. It is observation, remedy, faith, argument, caution, and courage. It is also limited by conditions no tea can cure, no charm can untie, and no prayer can make just. The body is cared for inside a world that keeps injuring it. A smudge fire burns lower beside the ditch. Mosquitoes still hover, offended but not defeated. The frogs continue their round calls. A breeze lifts, faint and damp, carrying the scent of rain that may come by morning. You rub your arm where bites have risen, small and hot under your fingers. The night presses close, but the people inside it press closer. At last. The healer sits near the doorway and closes her eyes for a moment. Her hands rest open in her lap, stained with herbs and smoke. No one disturbs her. The cabins breathe around her, each holding its own warmth, worry, and fragile rest. Above the yard, clouds move slowly across the moon. The air remains heavy, but something in it has softened. Not safety, not certainty, only the quiet mercy of having made it through this hour. You lie awake beneath a low roof, with darkness folded softly over the room. The fire has fallen into a red whisper, and the smoke has thinned to a faint grey smell. Around you, people sleep in small arrangements of need and habit, some on pallets, some under rough blankets, some curled close for comfort. Outside, the crickets keep their patient measure, as if time itself has learned to sing. The night air slips through the gaps in the wall and touches your face. It feels damp, warm, and restless. A corner of the blanket scratches your wrist. The floor beneath you is firm, with a coolness that rises slowly through cloth. Somewhere near the doorway, a child murmurs in sleep, then settles. The sound is tender enough to ache. Sleep is not always escape, but it is something like shelter. Your eyes adjust to the dark, and the cabin becomes a country of shadows. A hanging coat looks like a person standing still. A stool becomes a crouched animal. The rafters hold herbs, smoke, and secrets. Beyond the doorway, the cotton field lies invisible, but you feel its presence the way you feel weather before rain. It waits outside the circle of sleep, patient, pale, and demanding. Thoughts come more clearly at night, which is both a blessing and a nuisance. Daylight fills the hands, but darkness leaves room for memory. You sense minds around you travelling while bodies remain still. Someone may be thinking of a mother sold years ago. Someone may remember a child carried to another county. Someone may picture a road, a river, a name, a place where the law might loosen its grip. Family life under slavery is filled with love and danger together. Enslaved people marry, raise children, care for elders, claim kin, and build households, even when the law refuses to protect those bonds. A marriage may be honoured within the community while having no secure standing in court. A parent may cherish a child while knowing that sale, debt, death, or punishment could break the household apart. That knowledge changes the shape of every lullaby. You hear a soft sound near the wall. Someone is awake. The person shifts, then becomes still again, as if even rest must be negotiated quietly. A hand reaches toward a sleeping child and rests there, fingers spread across a small back. The gesture is wordless. It says, "You're here." It says, "I am here." It says what law cannot understand and property records refuse to record. A mainstream historical fact lives inside this silence. In 1850, the federal census counted enslaved people separately from free people, listing them in schedules without names in many records. They were often recorded by age, sex, and colour, rather than personal identity. The paper system reduced lives to categories. But inside cabins, names mattered intensely, spoken softly, remembered carefully, and carried like coals protected from wind. Names become a kind of hidden wealth. A child may be named for a grandparent, a preacher, a lost sister, a remembered place, or a hope nobody says too loudly. A nickname may travel farther than a formal name. A secret name may live in family speech while another appears in records. You feel how naming can resist erasure. To say a name with love is to refuse the world's lazy accounting. Outside, a night bird calls from the trees. The note is hollow and sudden. For a moment, nobody moves. Then the ordinary sounds return. The crickets, the leaves, the slow breathing. The bird's cry leaves behind a faint unease, as if it has opened a door and closed it again. Rural night is full of such small alarms. Most mean nothing. Some mean everything. The trouble is knowing which is which. A person lying near the hearth whispers a line of prayer. The words are soft enough that only fragments reach you. Mercy, mourning, keep. The prayer is not polished, and no one asks it to be. It rises from a place below grammar, where fear and hope sit shoulder to shoulder. Faith at night does not always sound like certainty. Sometimes it sounds like asking not to be broken. Dreams of distance gather in the room. Distance may mean a few miles to another plantation where a spouse lives. It may mean a town where news moves quickly. It may mean the north, spoken of in fragments, imagined through rumour, song, and rare stories. It may mean Africa, preserved in memory or transformed by generations. It may mean heaven, because earthly maps have been made too cruel. You imagine a woman thinking of her husband on a neighbouring place. Such separated marriages were common under slavery when partners belonged to different enslavers. Visits might depend on passes, permission, distance, patrols, and risk. A Saturday night walk could be precious and dangerous. Love required planning. Even affection had to learn geography. The heart wanted a straight road, but power built fences everywhere. A quirky tidbit drifts through the darkness from the world of passes and patrols. In some communities, a scrap of paper could decide whether movement seemed lawful or suspicious. People sometimes memorized, borrowed, forged, altered, or strategically interpreted passes when trying to visit kin or move at night. Paper, normally so flimsy, could become a gate, a shield, or a trap. It is impressive how much arrogance can fit on one small sheet. Patrollers, sometimes called slave patrols, monitored roads, gatherings, and movement in many southern communities. Their practices varied, but their purpose was control. They could stop people, demand passes, search, threaten, and punish. The thought of them changes how night feels. A road under moonlight may look beautiful, yet also dangerous. A barking dog may mean a neighbour, a possum, or trouble with boots. You listen to the wind in the trees and imagine footsteps where there are none. Leaves brush together like whispered warnings. The smell of damp earth seems stronger, far away. Perhaps from the road comes a faint creak, then nothing. Your breathing slows, but your mind keeps watching. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it is simply the refusal to sleep completely. Still, the mind also makes room for futures, not always clear futures and not always safe ones, but futures all the same. Someone may dream of buying freedom, though the path is narrow and often blocked by law, money, and betrayal. Someone may dream of a child learning letters, even when literacy is restricted or punished. Someone may dream of a garden large enough to feed a family without asking anyone's permission. Literacy carries enormous power. Some enslaved people learn to read or write through secret teaching, observation, religious instruction, or rare permission. Laws and customs varied, and many enslavers feared literacy because written words could support escape. Communication, religious independence, and claims to personhood. A letter can cross distance. A Bible verse can be read without mediation. A name can be written by its owner. Such acts could become dangerous miracles. Historians continue to argue how widespread literacy was among enslaved people in particular regions. because the evidence is incomplete and often hidden by secrecy. Some records show remarkable individual learning despite harsh restrictions. Other evidence reveals severe limits imposed by law and surveillance. The uncertainty matters because learning often occurred quietly, outside official view. Where power tried to make ignorance, people made lessons in doorways, kitchens, churches. And memory! You think of letters that might never be sent. A message to a mother, a sign to a brother, a mark on a scrap of wood, a verse remembered from church. Words live in the body when paper is unsafe. People memorize names, routes, hymns, warnings, and promises. Memory becomes a library without shelves. It cannot be burned easily. Though grief can scatter its pages, near the doorway the sleeping child turns over and sighs. The sound is soft, almost satisfied. You wonder what dreams can visit a child born into bondage. Maybe a sweet potato cooling in ashes. Maybe a dog running foolishly through the yard. Maybe a face leaning close with a song. Childhood still makes its own small kingdoms. Even where adults know the borders are cruel, a child's dream may be the freest country in the room. The fire gives a faint tick. The last log shifts. In that small sound, you sense the fragile privacy of the hour. Night does not abolish control, but it thins some of its edges. Spoken words can lower themselves. Eyes can close. A person can imagine without being seen. Imagination is not freedom, but it is not nothing. It can keep the shape of freedom alive until the world changes or the road opens. Some dreams are practical. Where is the safest crossing? Which neighbour can be trusted? How much food can be carried? What stars point north? Which dogs are quiet? Which creek floods after rain? These questions may belong to escape, but also to everyday visiting and survival. Knowledge of landscape becomes protection. Trees, ditches, paths, swamps, fences, ferries, and roads form a hidden map beneath the official one. Other dreams are emotional rather than geographic. To sleep through a whole night without fear, to own the labour of one's hands, to keep children near, to choose when to marry, where to worship, what to plant, how to rest. Such wishes may sound simple, but oppression makes simple things radical. A door that opens by choice can be more luxurious than any chandelier. Funny, what power teaches people to value? You feel the room's breathing deepen again. The wakeful person near the wall has finally grown still. The hand remains on the child's back, outside. A breeze moves through the cotton plants, and although you cannot see them, you hear their dry leaves whisper. The sound resembles paper being turned. The field, in its sleep, seems to read from a book no one wants but everyone must enter. A memory may rise in someone nearby, uninvited. An auction yard, a road away from home, a sister's face at dusk, a last meal shared quickly. Sale is one of slavery's sharpest terrors, and it haunts even nights without immediate threat. The domestic slave trade has already forced countless people from the Upper South to the Deep South. Mississippi's cotton expansion depends in part on such coerced migration. Families carry those separations in their bones. The cabin remains quiet, but quiet does not mean empty. It is full of remembered voices. Some belong to the living far away. Some belong to the dead. Some belong to people whose fate is unknown, which may be the hardest category. Not knowing can stretch longer than grief. A person can mourn a loss and still hope against sense. Hope is stubborn, occasionally foolish, often necessary. A small cloth bundle lies near someone's sleeping place. It may hold a keepsake, a bit of hair, a bead, a coin, a letter, a charm, or nothing valuable to anyone else. Such personal objects rarely appear in grand histories, but they carry private worlds. Touching them can summon people and places. The object may be cheap. The attachment is not. Value has always been poorly understood by markets. You breathe in slowly, tasting ash and night damp. Your own thoughts soften around the edges. The darkness no longer feels empty, but layered with distances, some measured in miles, some in memory, some in lore. A cricket calls from very near the door, loud enough to seem indoors. Another answers from the grass. Their rhythm continues, indifferent but strangely comforting. The world keeps count, even when records fail. Dreams of freedom do not always roar. Sometimes they whisper beneath a blanket. Sometimes they hide inside a hymn. Sometimes they appear as a mother's hand refusing to leave a child's shoulder. Sometimes they become a path studied in silence, a letter imagined, a name preserved, a skill taught, a story remembered. The dream may be dangerous, but danger does not make it vanish. It only teaches it to move softly. The room drifts closer to sleep. A foot shifts under cloth. A breath catches, then eases. The coals fade from red to dull crimson, then to a soft dark glow. Outside, the cotton field rustles under a moon now hidden by cloud. The night seems to lower itself gently over every roof, every row, every road, every river path. You lie still and listen as distance gathers around you. Not only as separation, but as possibility. At last, your body grows heavier than your thoughts. The hard floor feels less hard. The blanket feels warmer. The sounds outside blur together. Cricket, frog, leaf, far dog, soft wind. You carry no answer into sleep, only the sense of lives held in tension between love and loss, fear and planning, memory and the unknown. Somewhere in the dark, a person dreams of a road. Somewhere else, a name is remembered. The night keeps both safe for now. Dawn waits below the trees before it touches the sky, and you feel it first as a change in the air. The darkness is still deep, yet its edges have loosened. The cabin breathes around you, warm with sleeping bodies, cooling ash, and old smoke settled into cloth. Outside, the crickets continue for a little while, determined to finish their night shift with professional pride. You open your eyes to a room almost without shape. The hearth is a low grey mound with one hidden red point inside it. A blanket lies heavy across your legs. The floor presses against your shoulder with the familiar honesty of packed earth. Somewhere close, a sleeper sighs, then turns carefully to avoid waking others. Rest here is crowded, but still precious. A rooster calls before anyone has asked for his service. Then another answers, farther away, clearly unwilling to be outshouted. Birds begin in the trees, one note at a time, testing the pale morning. Their sound is different from night music. It has corners and brightness in it. Frogs fade into the ditch grass. The air smells of dew, soot, damp wood, and the faint sweetness of crushed weeds near the doorway. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the child sleeping nearest your elbow. The blanket slides from your shoulder, scratching lightly along your arm. A cool draught enters through the wall gaps and moves across your neck. It is the kind of coolness that will not last, and everyone knows it. Morning in Mississippi offers mercy briefly, then takes up heat again like unfinished business. A woman near the hearth wakes without ceremony. She has slept, but not surrendered. Her hands go first to the coals, because fire is morning's first negotiation. Ashes pushed aside with a stick. The red point brightens. A twist of dry grass, a shaving of wood, then a thin splinter placed with care. Smoke rises before flame, pale and searching. The smell sharpens. The room begins again. Keeping embers alive overnight saves labour, and this small household skill matters in daily life. In many rural homes, the hearth is not merely a place for cooking, but a centre of heat, light, memory, and work. Fire must be fed, banked, guarded, and coaxed back each morning. A cold hearth means more effort. A live coal is a quiet victory preserved under ash. You watch the flame catch. It crawls along the splinter, bright at the edge, then opens into a small yellow tongue. The woman bends close and blows gently. The flame shivers, grows, and settles into useful life. Someone else rises and reaches for the water bucket. A foot finds a shoe by touch. Cloth rustles. Sleep leaves the room reluctantly, like a guest pretending not to hear the house cleaning. Outside, the yard is grey-blue and wet with dew. You step through the doorway and feel grass soak your feet almost at once. The sensation is cold enough to wake you properly. A faint mist lies close to the ground. It gathers near the fence, between the cabins, and along the shallow ditch where mosquitoes will soon remember their calling. For now, the insects are quieter. Small blessings should not be interrogated too harshly. The cotton field appears little by little. First the dark mass of it, then rows, then leaves, then white bowls catching early light like bits of torn cloud. Dew rests on leaf edges and spider webs, making everything look briefly delicate. The land almost seems innocent, which is a remarkable performance. Fields at dawn can be very persuasive. They show beauty before they show the bill. You hear water being drawn at the well. The rope creaks over the pulley, rough and steady. The bucket drops, strikes, fills, and rises with a wet scrape against the well wall. Cold drops spill onto the ground. A girl carries the bucket with both hands, shoulders lifted slightly under its weight. The water smells mineral, wooden, and clean enough for hope. Steam soon rises from a pot near the fire. Morning food is practical. Cornmeal may be stirred into mush, leftover cakes warmed, sweet potatoes split, coffee prepared if available, or a substitute brewed from roasted grains, roots, or whatever household thrift has declared acceptable. The smell of hot meal fills the room, plain and comforting. A little grease hisses in a skillet. Someone breaks a cake and passes half to a child who eats with solemn attention. A mainstream fact settles into the light. Plantation days were often organised by bells, calls, daylight, seasons, and the demands of the crop. Time did not belong equally to everyone. For enslaved workers, mornings could begin before sunrise, especially during intense agricultural periods. The day's schedule was shaped by command, weather, field conditions, and the crop's relentless timing. Dawn was not leisure. Dawn was preparation. You wash your face with water poured into a basin. The shock of coolness meets your skin, runs down your chin, and drips onto the dirt. It feels cleansing for one breath. Then the smoke and humidity return. A cloth rubs your cheek with rough insistence. Nearby, a mother wipes a child's face while the child twists away in pure devotion to inconvenience. Childhood has many freedoms, and resisting cleanliness is apparently one of them. A quirky morning belief enters with the first light. Some people say you should notice which bird calls first, because it may hint at the day's luck. Others watch the direction of smoke, the colour of sunrise, or the behaviour of chickens. If hens scratch eagerly, perhaps weather will shift. If a rooster crows at a strange hour, someone will claim meaning. Roosters, naturally, accept credit for the universe. The sky brightens in peach and pearl above the trees. Smoke rises from several chimneys, thin at first, then thicker. It hangs low before drifting. The smell of different fires mingles over the yard, each one carrying its own meal, its own ash, its own household. A baby cries briefly, then is comforted. A man coughs, spits into the weeds, and straightens his back with visible negotiation. Bodies have opinions in the morning. Tools are gathered near the yard's edge. A hoe blade catches the new light. A basket is lifted. A sack is shaken open. Wood handles feel slightly damp from night air. Metal feels cool, then warms in the hand. Shoes are tied, cloths adjusted, hats found, head wraps secured, and children assigned small tasks. The yard becomes a choreography of necessity. Nobody applauds. The performance is too useful for that. Historians still debate how to describe the balance between coercion and community routine in such mornings. The workday began under a violent system that denied freedom, yet people also formed habits, skills, care networks, and private meanings within that imposed structure. Some accounts emphasize domination, others recover resilience and internal community life. Both truths must be held together, because endurance does not make oppression gentle, and oppression does not erase human creativity. You walk a little way toward the field and look back. The cabins stand low under lifting smoke. The kitchen building is already active, its door open to heat and command. The main house catches sunrise in its windows, shining calmly, as if glass has no conscience. Chickens scratch near the fence. A pig grunts with philosophical depth near its trough. The world appears ordinary, and that is part of its ache. A bell sounds. The note is clear, hard, and small enough to seem harmless if you knew nothing. But everyone knows. Movement sharpens. Conversations end or drop to whispers. The morning has crossed its invisible line. People step toward rows, paths, kitchens, barns, and doors. Some carry tools, some carry trays, some carry water, some carry children for one last moment before setting them down. The bell fades, but its meaning remains. You feel the dew soak into your hem as you stand beside the cotton plants. The leaves are cool against your hand. A bowl opens near your fingers, soft white fibre guarded by dry points. The sun has not reached high enough to burn away the damp. For a few minutes, the field smells fresh, almost sweet, with soil breathing upward and green life waking. It is beautiful. It is not kind. There is a strange quiet before full work begins. People take positions, sacks fall into place, a voice gives instruction, a bird lifts from the field and flies low toward the trees. Your own breath seems louder than it should. The day ahead stretches long, and no one needs to say so. Muscles remember what the mind has not yet accepted. Cotton waits with perfect patience. Yet morning also carries small human details that power cannot organize fully. A woman tucks a bit of food into a cloth for later. A man shows a boy how to hold a hoe to spare his wrist. Someone murmurs a joke about the rooster needing to pick a row if he insists on announcing work. A brief smile appears, then vanishes into duty. Humour slips into the day like contraband sunshine. The sun clears the trees. Light spreads over the field in long bands, turning dew to sparks. The mist thins. The cotton rows grow sharp and visible, running outward in ordered lines. Your shadow stretches behind you, tall and blue on the soil. The night's stories, songs, fears, remedies, and dreams have not vanished. They have gone inward, carried beneath the skin into the day. You understand now that this morning is not a clean beginning. It is a continuation shaped by memory, the fire coaxed from embers, the water lifted from the well, the food shared quickly, the tools gathered, the bell obeyed, the field entered, all belong to one long rhythm. History lives in that rhythm. It is not only written in treaties and markets, it is carried in shoulders, hands, recipes, songs, scars, and names spoken softly. The first true heat touches the back of your neck, a fly lands on your wrist, and you shake it away. The sack strap crosses your shoulder again. The cotton plants rustle in the small wind, leaf against leaf, like a crowd whispering before a verdict. Somewhere behind you, the hearth smoke continues to rise. Somewhere ahead, the row asks for your body. Morning has opened its eyes, and the world has begun. You move forward into the pale rose, one step, then another. The soil darkens where dew has not yet dried. Your fingers close around the first white tuft. It yields softly, then catches at the burr. The motion begins again, simple, repeated, and full of everything the night could not erase. Behind the cabins, the sun climbs higher. The crickets are quiet now. The day has taken their place. And now, as the morning brightness slowly softens inside your imagination, you may let the field drift farther away. The rows grow less sharp. The bell grows thinner, as if heard through water. The cabins blur into warm shapes beneath the trees, and the smoke rises in slow ribbons that unwind into the pale sky. You no longer need to hold every detail. You can let the sounds loosen, one by one. The rooster becomes only a distant note. The bucket rope becomes only a gentle creak. The fire becomes a low red memory under ash. Even the cotton, so demanding beneath the sun, becomes soft in the mind, like a cloud resting close to the earth. You breathe slowly, and the whole scene breathes with you. Inhale the cool dew, exhale the smoke and worry. Inhale the hush before day. Exhale the weight of the rose. The people you have walked beside remain in the quiet dignity of their lives. Their hands, voices, songs, remedies, jokes, and hopes settle gently into the dark behind your eyes. Nothing needs to be solved now. Nothing needs to be carried farther tonight. Let the river road grow silent. Let the herbs hang still. Let the crickets return softly at the edge of hearing, patient and small. The firelight lowers. The field fades. The sky becomes a deep, calm blue, without heat, without dust, without command. You're only resting now, held by the slow rhythm of breath and shadow. The night is safe inside the story. The embers glow once, then dim. A final cricket calls from somewhere far away, and the sound is enough. Let your thoughts become lighter. Let your body become quiet. Let sleep come near, warm as a blanket, soft as ash, and gentle as the last light leaving the cotton leaves. End of script. Sleep well.